Chapter 1. One for All is an old quirk. It has existed for over 200 years. It has seen the rise and downfall of many with a detached amusement. With the exception of its users, One for All is protective of its user. It shares their joy when they achieve something they wish for, and their sorrows when they're feeling down. It mourns and cherishes each and every one of them deeply. It loves and admires first strength of will to have stood up against his brother, second's caution and cynicism, third's unwavering loyalty, fourth's love of nature, the way fifth found joy in the littlest of things, sixth's one-track mindset, seventh's ability to love so deeply, and eighth's unbridled enthusiasm and joy to be a hero and do the right thing. And now, One for All was passed on once more, and this time, there's no one on the verge of death. Now, One for All can start to learn more about Little Ninth. Find things to admire and love, like it has for all of its users. And slowly, in the month since Ninth first used its power, One for All has been learning about him. Little Ninth shares Seventh's ability to love anyone and anything with all his heart. He shares Eighth's enthusiasm for being a hero. He shares Fifth's tendency to find joy in the little things. But One for All has also learned more about what sets Little Ninth apart. Ninth is so smart. One for All can see the notes he takes, and hear some of his thoughts, and there's so much, and he's so determined to do the right thing and help others, too. So, cute, smart Little Ninth is someone that One for All loves. But Ninth's body isn't strong enough to be able to use its power, and that isn't acceptable. How can One for All protect Ninth if One for All hurts him? This is an issue that needs to be fixed, and One for All will fix it. Little Ninth won't need to worry. One for All will keep him safe. One for All will succeed with Ninth, where it failed with its previous users. No one will hurt Little Ninth. That's something One for All promises itself. So when it feels Ninth channel its power through his arm, One for All panics. What is Ninth thinking? That'll break his arm. One for All can't let it happen. But before anything can happen, Ninth stops channeling power, and One for All feels its connection to Ninth weaken. And suddenly, One for All is angry, because who dares to try and separate it from its user? And how dare they make Little Ninth so scared? This cannot be allowed. One for All needs to do something to fix this, and it needs to do it now. One for All is struck with an idea then. It reached singularity with Ninth. If Ninth can't handle its power, then One for All will just need to pull out one of the others. After all, it's finally able to do that now. And One for All has the perfect one in mind. The second's quirk, projection. It projects an avatar of your will that is controlled by the user like a puppet. But since One for All is sentient, it can do the puppeting. That'll let it help out Ninth more than it normally could. Izuku is a shy kid, mostly because, for all his life, speaking would mean getting punished by someone, whether that be his peers, teachers, or neighbors, so he stays shy and quiet whenever he can get away with it. Teacher scolding you? Just stay quiet and nod along. Eventually, they get bored and leave you alone. Classmate bullying you? Just stay quiet and nod along. Eventually, they get bored and leave you alone. Of course, he's not a moron. He wasn't able to sharpen his quirk or body, so he settled for sharpening his mind. It's his most dangerous weapon and tool, and he's proud of that, damn it. So he knows that what his teachers and classmates do isn't right. Knows that some of it is even against the school rules or even the law. So just because he stayed quiet doesn't mean he did nothing. He took photos and videos of any injuries he sustained. He got into the habit of carrying around a recording device so anything people say to him can be used against them. Every word, insult and threat recorded and stored. He was fully prepared to send all he had to the police the moment a line was crossed. He himself was unsure of what that line was, but he figured he'd know it if he saw it. But he stopped those habits. After all, he has a quirk now. He has a quirk, and he goes to UA, the best hero school this side of the planet. There won't be any corrupt teachers or cruel bullying classmates in such a school. So why ever would he need to be so cautious and paranoid? But of course, the one time he decides to believe in the established system's competence, he lands in this mess. This mess, of course, being restrained and yelled at by his teacher for having no potential, while his longtime childhood bully laughs at him. Distantly, he thinks that he might have finally found the line. But most of him is focused on the fact that he can feel his quirk doing something inside him. He can feel his quirk doing something, even though he's being restrained and glared at by Eraserhead. Out of nowhere, a purple arm clad in a black glove with gold stones on it appears and socks Aizawa-sensei in the face hard enough to send him flying back a dozen or so feet, and land in a heap. The class stops whispering amongst themselves and quiets down, some dropping into fighting stances. Bakugu is one of them. Izuku looks back and sees a purple figure floating in the air behind him, decked out in black, white, and gold clothes, with flowing green hair. The figure pulls back its outstretched arm. "Stay the fuck away from my user, you fucking weirdo." Chapter 2. The line TM has been crossed. Takes Izuku a grand total of 2 seconds to figure out what happened. The floating purple person/thing is somehow his quirk. Them punching Aizawa-sensei, and in turn, freeing Izuku, was enough to stir the gears in Izuku's head. Calling Izuku their user was a dead giveaway, and Izuku would have been disappointed in himself if he didn't get it. He turns his full attention to the manifestation of his quirk. "Whoa, you're my quirk, aren't you? But I thought that my quirk was a standard body enhancement. But you seem to be manifesting yourself outside my body, with no visible tether. But you aren't just a simple manifestation though. There's something different from standard manifestation-type emitter quirks." Izuku brings his hand to his chin. "You were able to activate and retaliate to a perceived threat to your user, of your own accord, all while being erased. From what I know of erasure, it doesn't work on mutant class quirks. This implies that either my quirk isn't an emitter class like I thought, but rather mutant, or it implies that erasure doesn't actually erase its target quirks." He shifts, reaching for the notebook he keeps in the pocket his mom stitches onto all his clothes. Technically, every quirk can be classified as mutant class quirks, given that every quirk has mutative secondary traits that facilitate the function and existence of the quirk. However, erasure is incapable of stopping the function of the secondary mutation traits, but the use of the quirks themselves ceases. The most likely scenario is that erasure is a Category G ocular-based illusion quirk. In that situation, the user merely thinks that they lost their quirk. A Class 3 or above sentient-type quirk should theoretically be able to activate the quirk, as they are the quirk. But that doesn't explain how my quirk is no longer a standard body enhancement. He's broken out of any further attempt at theorizing when his quirk speaks. And boy, is that an extremely wild concept for someone who was quirkless a month ago. Strength would have broken little Ninth's bones. One for all refuses to hurt Ninth. So One for all found an alternative solution. Instead of the manifestation speaking, Izuku hears a voice in his head, and that gets him into another mumble storm. "Did you just speak in my mind? Does that mean my quirk has mild telepathic properties?" But then again, there is Dr. Umezawa's theory of quirk connectivity. You're probably just able to speak to me telepathically because you're my quirk, and quirks are a part of people. An explosion distracts everyone, Izuku included. However, to Izuku, those explosions are familiar. When he turns towards where the explosions are coming from, where Bakugu is standing, he dreads what's about to happen next. Aizawa-sensei has already shown that he's biased and has it out for him. He doubts he would intervene if Bakugu tried anything. Bakugu is glaring at Izuku, tiny explosions popping in his hands. And then Bakugu moves, and all Izuku hears is the deafening crack of an explosion. And the next thing he knows, Bakugu is in the air, arms stretched out towards Izuku. And then he's hit by the purple arm of Izuku Quirk and launched away farther than Aizawa was. "You hurt a hair on his head, and I'll rip you apart limb from limb," is the ominous-sounding threat and or promise that his quirk levels Bakugu with. Whoa, his quirk can talk out loud as well. So the manifestation either has vocal cords, or something else that serves the same purpose. Aizawa chooses now as the time to intervene. Midoriya, he barks out. Everyone's attention, sans Bakugu of course, snaps towards where Aizawa-sensei is standing. You're expelled. You not only half-assed the entrance exam by not using your full quirk, but you also attacked both a teacher and a classmate outside of school-mandated training. Get the hell out of the school. With a stony face, Izuku gives a short bow. Understood, Aizawa-san. Turning towards his classmates, he gives them a bow as well, this one deeper than the one he gave Aizawa. The time we have spent as peers is appreciated. I wish you well in your future. You have my apologies for disrupting the class. And with that, Izuku walks away with his head held high, face not giving away a single emotion. But on the inside, Izuku was a mess of emotions. Pride for having kept his cool in a stressful situation. Joy that his quirk has different aspects that'll be easier to use. Sadness that he'll have to leave his dream school. Fury at Aizawa for treating him the way he did. Anger at Aizawa at Yue at Bakugu. So when he turns the corner, shadowed by his quirk, and runs into All Might, he breaks down crying. He's always been a crier after all, and the human response to intense emotions was to cry. All Might just holds him, willing to just be there and comfort him. I am so sorry that this has happened, my boy. Why don't we leave? We can figure out what to do later. But Izuku pulls away. He's been hiding, waiting, for that unknown line to be crossed. And it sure as hell has been crossed now. Izuku has always loved listening to stories about mermaids when he was younger. They had nothing to do with quirks or heroes, so he and his mom could just enjoy them without the tension that comes between them otherwise. There was nothing in those stories shaming him about how he didn't have a quirk. Completely disconnected from them, in fact. And it makes sense, considering that the stories are from before the dawn of quirks. They're stories that have survived centuries, all the way from the golden age of piracy. Excuse me, Present Mike? Could I have a moment of your time? But what he loves most are the stories of how mermaids are born. Present Mike looks up from where he sat, presumably doing beginning of the year work like looking at lesson plans or something. How can I help you, little listener? And aren't you supposed to be at orientation? There's one in particular that's his favorite, in fact. I was in Aizawa-san's class. About how sailors killed and drowned at sea clung to life with a vengeance. Realization dawns in Present Mick's eyes. Ah, did he? About how they dragged their killers down into the murky depths with them. He has expelled me, yes. How they were referred to as the demons of the sea. Then I'm afraid there's nothing that can be done. If he believed that you were unfit to be a hero, either by being a danger to yourself or others, then as a homeroom teacher, he is well within his rights to expel you. He loved how even though they were wronged, hurt, and killed, they clung on to ensure that their killer would see to justice. Izuku shakes his head. That isn't what I wanted to ask. Ensure that their killer wouldn't hurt anyone else. I wanted to know if I could have the security feed of the class I was in sent to me. It's just my quirk evolved, I think. Or has it always been there, and I just found out about it? Anyway, I would appreciate being able to see my quirk in action. See the things I could improve and all that. I mean, I was expelled because I wasn't good enough, and I will never be able to improve if I don't know what exactly I did wrong, and what I can fix. And Izuku's going to try his best to follow in their footsteps. Present Mick's face softens, and he nods. That's quite admirable of you, little listener. I think that can be done. Best of luck to you in the future. If Aizawa decided to kick him out of the school and try and drown his dreams, then Izuku will just have to drag Aizawa down to the murky depths with him. Chapter 3. Not alone anymore. If he's going through with this, he's going to be thorough. All Might headed back inside, saying there were a few things he needs to get done before they can leave, while Izuku is waiting for his classmates to exit, talking with his quirk to pass the time. You mentioned that you found an alternative solution before. What was it? And how exactly is this possible anyway? Yagi-sensei never mentioned anything about the quirk physically manifesting. It would have been on the news if he went around fighting alongside a flying purple figure. Izuku pauses mumbling and scrunches up his eyebrows. There has got to be a better way to refer to you. He hears One for All's telepathic response in his head. Projection. That could work. You are, in a sense, projecting yourself out of me. No. Quirk's name is Projection. Izuku just stares blankly at One for All. Because what the fuck was that supposed to mean? Quirk's name is Projection. Wait. You called me ninth before. As in the ninth user. One for All nods. Izuku's mind is racing with the possibilities. There's no way this means what he thinks it might mean. Because if he's the ninth user and is having bizarre, unexplained quirk effects, then that could mean that Dr. Garaki's quirk singularity theory about quirks evolving an exponential amount every generation is true, and I have the first in the world. But given the nature of the quirk, it wouldn't simply be a singularity quirk, it would be an amalgamation of singularity quirks. As if a singularity quirk hit singularity. He feels warmth and pride radiating from within, startling him. When he looks up, he sees One for All softly smiling at him and realizes that the feeling was coming from the quirk. Little Ninth is correct. Projection is the quirk of second. Creates a puppet made of the user's willpower. Since One for All is stronger with singularity, One for All can now control the puppet. One for All can protect Ninth now, don't worry. No one will hurt you now. When he feels One for All patting him on the head after giving that speech, Izuku can no longer hold it in and starts bawling. That was one of the sweetest things anyone's ever said to, and with such care and love. The only people to care about him have been his mom, and more recently All Might. After a few moments of One for All flailing about, unsure of what to do, he hears a concerned voice speak up. Midoriya-kun? Are you all right? I am so sorry about what happened. That jerk. How could he just expel you like that? When he turns to see who called him, he sees some of his classmates, including Uraraka-san, come up to him, with Uraraka, in particular, seeming rather cross. By the end of her consoling speech, she had her arms crossed and her cheeks puffed out like a chipmunk. He smiles at them. Hey everyone, I was hoping if I could have a few moments of your time. That catches the attention of even those who were just trying to walk past. When he sees that he has the attention of everyone who wants to give it, he gives a short bow. Thank you. I will be quick in what I have to say. What Aizawa-san did today broke several laws. I wasn't committing a crime, nor was that, according to his own words, a school-mandated sparring exercise. The fact that he used both his support gear and quirk on me, a civilian student doing as instructed, then tied me up and spewed insults to my face goes against the Quirk Registration Act of 2076, the Reasonable Public Quirk Usage Act of 2141, the Police Brutality Protection Act of 2027, the Weapon Registration Act of 1995, and its follow-up, the Support Gear Registration Act of 2186. And that's just the laws he's broken as a hero. There are rules and regulations of both the HPSC and the Education Committee that he's broken. Midoriya-kun, why do you know so many laws by heart, Karo? Is the deadpan question he receives. My mom's a lawyer, is, in turn, the just as deadpan reply he gives. Is there a reason you are informing of this other than as an act of protest? The guy with blue hair and glasses asks, swinging his arms about in a rigid manner. Ida, right? Yes, my name is Ida Tenya. It is a pleasure to meet you, even if it was cut short. Yes, there is a reason. I plan on taking this matter to the court. I wanted to ask if any of you would be willing to testify as to the events that happened today from your perspective. Whether or not you are willing, I would still like to thank you all for giving me your time. He bows down at a right angle and waits for a reply. He looks up when he hears a sigh. Get up, Green, says the purple-haired girl. I have enhanced hearing, you know? It's half my quirk. And I heard Aizawa insult everything from your abilities to your ethics, to your ideals and dreams. Dude's a bully, plain and simple. If you're taking his ass to court, I'd be willing to testify every single word I've heard. The girl with pink hair jumps up and nods vigorously. Aha! Like she said, guy's a bully, and I hate bullies. Hell yeah, I'm gonna testify. It's the manly thing to do. And it's so manly of you to stand up to this guy Brodoria. The way Aizawa acted was unbecoming of a teacher at an institute as prestigious as UA. And one by one, the people who stayed behind to listen to what he had to say started making their support in this clear as day. He looks at all of these people willing to help him, the kid expelled from UA on the first day, and feels tears start to well up again. He's not sure why he expected anything else. They're hero hopefuls, of course they jump on the opportunity to help someone out and legally take down a bully in power. Chapter 4. Enter Inko. Midoriya Inko is a kind and simple woman. She worries a lot and cries just as frequently. She loves her wonderful son, and her job, and the neighborhood they live in. So when she hears the doorbell ring, she thinks nothing of it. Maybe it's just one of the neighbors showing up to have a chat. When it's her son behind the door, teary-eyed and tired, with a stranger awkwardly hovering behind him, she starts to worry about what happened. Did his classmates make fun of him? Are any of his old bullies going there? Did the teachers misbehave because her son used to be quirkless? She ignores all those questions with the practice of someone who worried over stupid things their whole life. She pulls Izuku into a hug. What happened, sweetie? Are you hurt? When, instead of responding, her son hugs her back and starts sobbing, her worrying is back in full force. She worries about her son a lot, but he usually tells her that there's no need, that she can calm down. The lack of that response is concerning. The stranger clears his throat, prompting her to turn to him. Good afternoon, Ms. Midoriya. My name is Yagi Tashinori. I am an ex-employee at UA High. May we go inside? Certain matters need to be discussed, and the hallway is hardly the place for them. She moves her son inside and onto the couch, gesturing for Mr. Yagi to do the same. Once they're all sat down, would you like to talk about this yourself, young Midoriya? Or would you like me to? Her son sniffles and shoots him a shaky smile, and with an equally as shaky voice, Izuku says, could you tell her, Yagi-sensei? I can pipe in when relevant. All right then. Ms. Midoriya, as I said, I used to work at UA High. However, I met your son last year. He impressed me, taught and reminded me what it means to be a hero. Things that I've forgotten in my long hero career. Inko schools her skepticism. If this Yagi guy was spewing shit, Izuku would cut in. Her son never did like misinformation. But that doesn't mean she isn't skeptical. You're a hero? Mr. Yagi chuckles. Hard to believe, but yes. I used to be in better shape a few years ago, but I got injured on duty. Decided to stubbornly stick with the hero gig even if it wasn't good for my health. And right as I was going to put my retirement plans into action, your son bounds in and forces me to remember the things I've forgotten in my cynicism. So I decided to train him for the school I was going to be employed in, his dream school. So you were the reason that he was so lively this last year? You were training him to be a hero. I was. Your son is a remarkable young man, and Quirk or not, he has the makings of a hero. Unfortunately, it seems that his homeroom teacher disagrees. Inko's stomach drops. That can't mean what she thinks it means. Not after all the work and effort Izuku put in. What do you mean? She asks, dreading the answer but knowing it nonetheless. Why else would her son be so disheartened? In the end, it was Izuku that answered. He expelled me. Aizawa-san expelled me. No, oh Izuku. She brings him closer to herself. Did he say why? Izuku nods into her shoulder. He had our class do a quirk assessment test. He pulled me aside when it was my turn, tied me up with his capture weapon, and then started saying stuff like how my quirk is pathetic and how I'll never be a hero. The despondent voice her son used during his explanation worried Inko, however. He marginally brightens up towards the end. Mom, my quirk's different from what I thought it was. Look, it's so cool. It's a class 3 or above sentient type quirk. I don't know whether it's an emitter or mutant classification yet, though. She smiles when Izuku starts ranting about his quirk. She's about to respond when a buff, purple humanoid ghost shows up and waves at her. Ah, ghost. Izuku turns to look behind, then back to her. What? She points to the purple man. The purple man. Ghost. Or intruder. Get away, Izuku. I'm gonna get my bat. Mom? That's my quirk. Please don't beat them up. Oh. Inko sits back down. So that's what he meant by his quirk being different than they thought. She takes a minute to think back to what Izuku's word vomit had in it. You said that it was sentient, right? Aha. Do they have a name then? Or am I just going to be calling them Purple Ghost Guy forever? Izuku takes a moment to think, then turns to look at Purple Ghost Guy. Star Platinum. Their name is Star Platinum. Inko blinks. Is that? It is. Izuku. Yeah. Did you seriously just name your quirk after a JoJo character? Both of them whirl around to look at Mr. Yagi when they hear him laugh. I'm glad you're feeling better, young Midoriya, but shall we get back on topic? Izuku lets out a groan and hides his face in his hands. Yes, sensei. Mr. Yagi smiles at him, then turns towards Inko. Young Midoriya's quirk. He stifles a laugh. Star Platinum. Retaliated in what they thought to be an attack, and punch Aizawa-san. They also attacked Bakugo-san when he actually tried attacking young Midoriya. I see. Young Midoriya was expelled for half-assing the entrance exam by not using his full quirk, as well as attacking a teacher and student unprovoked outside of training. I decided to follow young Midoriya out of UA. The standards have truly fallen if the teachers are allowed to act as such. Inko stills. What? And Izuku says, before Star Platinum showed up, he was saying that he was going to expel me for having an incompatible quirk for heroics. What? Why let him in then? Why let him in only to immediately expel him? What's the point in so cruelly crushing someone's dream? Mom! When she turns to him, he's smiling. I got a different teacher to give me the footage of the class, and some of my classmates are willing to testify in court. Have I mentioned that one of them has enhanced hearing as their quirk? Because they do. And slowly, Inko starts to smile back. Midoriya Inko is a kind and simple woman. She worries a lot and cries just as frequently. But if some jackass is messing with her son, she'll make sure they'll pay. Chapter 5 All Might? A delinquent, more likely than you think. Just as Izuku sat down to enjoy his tea and get working on his hero journal, he heard someone knock on the door. He wasn't expecting anyone, and his mom said she'd be late coming back from work. So, with a sigh of confusion and annoyance, he gets up and makes his way to the door. Yagi-sensei? He asks once he opens the door. What are you doing here? I thought you said you'd be busy for a week or two getting some paperwork sorted. Yes, well, I've been able to shuffle things around so that you don't have to stop your training. I've drawn up a few different training plans, but I'll need your input before I can refine any of them. Remembering that when one's mentor pops by to discuss training plans, you're supposed to let them in, Izuku sheepishly moves aside. Oh, of course. Let me just finish my tea. Hearing his mother admonishing him about being a poor host echo in his head, he adds on, do you want some, sensei? Even as he asks, Izuku starts making his way to the kitchen to get refreshments. Oh, I didn't know you drank tea, young Midoriya. Which blend? I know that certain blends help with building muscle. And nothing for me, thank you. It's quite difficult taking things in when you're missing a stomach. Izuku stares blankly. That's a thing? Guess I'll have to switch blends then. Gesturing towards the teacup he's holding with his chin, he says, this is just a lavender and mint to help with my anxiety. Gulping down the last of his tea, he sets a kettle of hot water along with some snacks on a tray before going back to the living room. Setting the tray on the table, he takes a seat. Right, you said something about training plans? Humming, Sensei reaches into his bag and brings out a notebook and a pen. So far, all your training has been focused around getting your body strong enough to hold one for all. Now that we've reached that goal, we'll need to get your body strong enough to both fight and use one for all. Do you already have a preferred fighting style? He's pretty sure he doesn't, considering how many times he got beat up. But he considers the question, thinking back to all the fights he's been in, trying to figure out if he did, in fact, have a fighting style. Not really, he starts reluctantly. I mean, I know how to throw a punch and how to take a punch, and which parts of my body should be protected and how to cover them, but that's about it. Most fights I got in didn't last long enough for me to really fight back. Snorting, Yagi-sensei shakes his head. Well, that's a better starting, mine was, at least. So if dash. Wait, how is it better yours? You're all might. Izuku wilts a little when his sensei levels him with a flat, dead stare. Young man, you do realize that before my master gave me one for all, I was just some idiot with a monkey mask and a metal pipe that picked fights with the Yakuza for shits and giggles, right? But you're… Izuku stutters, not caring if he's being rude, because he's in the middle of having an existential crisis. Thank you very much. Thankfully, All Might waits for him to gather himself. That doesn't make sense. If you were picking fights with Yakuza, you obviously knew how to fight properly. Picking up steam now that he started, Izuku continues rambling on. And you're the symbol of peace, the strongest hero in the world. You've single-handedly ushered in an era of peace. You had to have been strong even when you were younger. Sighing, Toshinori gears himself up for a long talk about his past. Because whether he likes it or not, Izuku needs this to stop putting Toshinori on some sort of pedestal. When I was a kid, things were awful. Crime was rampant, and the few heroes that were there died off far too frequently. People were scared to even leave their houses. And I hated it. I hated how bad things were, and I hated how no one tried to fix it even worse. So, I decided, if no one else was going to do something about it, I'll have to do it myself. I decided that I'd have to become a symbol of peace, a deterrent. But I wasn't delusional. I knew that the odds weren't in my favor, that I'd likely end up dead. But I didn't care. I would rather have died doing something, rather than be complacent, he says, smiling ruefully when thinks of those times. So I threw myself into fights, against drug dealers, against Yakuza, against villains. I had no care for my health, for how injured I got. It wasn't until I met my master that someone believed in my dream. She taught me how to live for my dream, rather than die for it. Until that point, I didn't care how I fought. I had a metal pipe and hitting people with it hurts, and that's all I cared about. Wagging a finger in young Midoriya's direction, Toshinori continues. You, on the other hand, know how to keep yourself in as good a condition as possible, and that is essential for a hero. After all, you can't help people if you're bleeding out. Izuku pays rapt attention to every word coming out of All Might's mouth, because where else will he get such information into the elusive symbol of peace's past? Processing and cataloging all of it as fast as possible. And even though he blushes in embarrassment towards the end, Izuku quickly pushes that towards the freak out about later pile and moves on to the thing that stirred his curiosity the most out of the explanation. Then why don't you use a staff as a support item now? Why'd you switch your fighting style to boxing? Young Midoriya, what do you think would happen if hit someone over the head with a one-for-all powered metal pipe? Oh, that makes sense. Probably a good thing you stuck to just your fists then. Chuckling, Toshinori answers young Midoriya's other question. As to why I switched to boxing, it was just something that took advantage of my body type. Speaking of which, we'll need to figure out which style you'll base your own on. I have some information here about a few different types of martial arts that I think would suit you. Take a look and tell me if anything catches your eye, and we can start with that. Izuku looks down at the stacks and stacks of papers that Yagi-sensei pushed towards him and feels strangely excited at the prospect of reading through them. Curious, Izuku asks, "Which one would you pick, sensei?" Grinning, Toshinori starts, "Have you ever heard of capoeira? It's a martial art that was developed in pre-Quirk Brazil." And Chapter 6. Nedzu goes apes hit. After going through a frankly ludicrous amount of information on different martial arts, they decided to go with some mix of capoeira, Muay Thai, and kickboxing, and see where they end up. After that, they spent more time coming up with an exercise routine that satisfied Izuku's workaholic in a way that wouldn't be harmful to his health. Yagi-sensei's suggestion of shadowboxing when restless instead of working out was smart, especially now, since he has a literal shadow that can box following him around. Stretching, Izuku looks over at his mentor with a curious look. Are we done with this, sensei? Because you've given me a lot of material to read through, and it looks super interesting. Snapping his fingers, Sensei starts rifling through his bag. I knew I was forgetting something. Taking out a folder full of paper, Sensei sets it on the table, pushing it towards Izuku. Curious, Izuku takes it, but puts it aside for the moment. He can always read through the entire thing later. Best to let All Might tell him what the context is, and which parts are important for him to know right now. What's this? That, my boy, is my plan on how to make you a hero. You can deny it, of course, and I will find an alternative in that case. But that plan is that I will take you under me as my apprentice. Wait, you want me to be your what now? Pausing a moment to consider what he just heard, Izuku continues his questions. What the hell is an apprentice? And how do I become one? Oh my god, I'm going to be All Might's apprentice. This is so much better than any merch I've ever bought. How? Do I need to fistfight Endeavor? Because I will fight that little bitch. The assholes had it coming anyway. Snorting, Sensei reaches over and ruffles his hair, resulting in Izuku letting out a rather embarrassing startled squawk. It's an old system where a pro can vouch for someone they see potential in and take them in under their wing. It'll let you gain a hero license once you've proved to be adequately trained. It's meant to be a system used to reform vigilantes, Sensei informs him, a smug grin starting to form on his face. But it says nothing about forbidding students from using the system. Tilting his head, Izuku lets that process. He's not really concerned about exploiting loopholes in the law to fuck with people. No, he's done that far too many times in the past to be bothered by it now, and even if that wasn't the case, his mentor is All Might. He's pretty sure the man could murder someone on live TV and people would just blame the dead guy for getting in All Might's way. No, what he is concerned about is something different. Wait, what about my schooling? I mean, technically I don't need further education to be a hero, but I'm pretty sure Mom would kill me if I told her that. Also, if it's a system built for vigilantes, won't they have checks in place to ensure that it's worth the effort of reforming them? Waving his hand in front of him dismissively, Sensei says, don't worry about the education. I've pulled some strings and Nedzu is happy to recommend you to distance learning. And you're right that it won't be easy to go with this method. Sensei says with a wry grin, you'll have to pass the provisional license exam before you can officially become my apprentice. Hitch. The provisional license exam. Izuku mutters, feeling dizzy. How the hell is he supposed to pass the fucking provisional license exam? He keeps on panicking until he notices that Sensei buffed up, and standing in his tiny living room is All Might in all his glory. What's the matter? I thought you said it didn't matter how hard you had to work, as long you became a hero. Giving up on that already? Hardening his resolve, Izuku glares at the symbol of peace without thinking. Never. I will become a hero. With a wide grin and a loud laugh, All Might lets go of his quirk, powering down in a puff of smoke. So you're all right with this? Because if you do have any reservations, I can come up with something else. Izuku shakes his head. No, I like this plan. I just have questions is all. Of course you do. Let's hear him. Izuku clears his throat. He's not nervous, but he is wary of what the potential consequences of this plan could be. Wouldn't being the apprentice of All Might paint a target on my back? While a target is something I will eventually gain over my career as a hero, getting one this early on seems too risky. I've considered that as well, but all things considered, the pros seem to outweigh the cons. And as for the issue of pushing too much into the spotlight, I have a solution to that particular issue as well. Izuku leans forward, eager to learn more about this solution. We'll have your costume include a mask, obscuring your face and identity, that, combined with submitting your application with your hero name instead of your actual name, should buy us some cover to keep you safe. Is that allowed? Because Izuku is pretty sure it isn't. Anyone can get the basic information about any hero. From their name to their accomplishments to their mission record, all of it is public. The only hero that doesn't have any information regarding them publicly available is All Might, and even after learning from and under the man for a year, Izuku still has no idea how he managed that. Technically, no. But the commission couldn't care less as long as you produce results. And the fact that I'm the one submitting the applications will get them to go along with it. Whoa! I get to have a secret identity. That's so cool. Chuckling, All Might ruffles his hair again. That you will. Now, if that's it, I just need to know what your hero name is going to be, and we'll be done for the day. I really do need to get back to that paperwork. Sensei sighs. Hero name? Izuku asks, feeling his voice switch in octave. He wasn't prepared for this. He was always so focused on the fact that he was going to become a hero that he'd never stopped to consider what that would look like. The best hero name he has is Small Might, a name he came up with when he was 4, and one he will never share with All Might of all people. Thank you very much. Can I think it over? I don't really have anything good. Sure thing, young Midoriya. Take your time. I remember how hard it was picking my name, so I don't imagine this is all that easy for you either. That starts grinding gears in his head. All Might's name is such an ingrained part of the world at this point that he's never bothered to stop and just think about it. Maybe that idea has some merit. Regardless, it's an idea to consider later. A hero's name is an integral part of their identity, and he wants to try and come up with one himself. First, Nezu has few people he trusts. Why would he, when all it would have gotten him in the past was hurt? He goes into every interaction expecting the other party to stab him in the back. A paranoia that has time and again hampered his ability to get along with people. A skill that is especially essential for a school principal like himself. Unfortunately, the paranoia is just the latest in a long line of parting gifts from the monsters in charge of that lab. But the few people that he does trust, he trusts wholeheartedly because they've proven that they wouldn't hurt him even if given the chance. The users of One for All are on that list, considering that the 6th user saved him from that lab and the 7th fought to get him considered as a person. But the person at the top of the list of people he trusts is the 8th user, All Might. He has had ample opportunity to harm Nezu over the years, but he never did. He even went so far as to repeatedly protect Nezu from the Hero Commission's wrath. So Nezu trusts him as a friend and a hero. So when All Might asked Nezu to look after his successor, the 9th user, Nezu agreed. He's known 3 users, and each and every one of them was a dear and trusted friend. He felt honored that he would be able to take part in shaping the 9th into becoming the hero Nezu knows he can be. And he knows the child will be a great hero, and not just because he has One for All, but because the first and only thing he did in the exam was save people. So when Aizawa, one of his best teachers, asked for Midoriya to be put in his class, a request he almost never makes, Nezu agrees, happy that Aizawa sees the potential in that child as well. He didn't expect this, though. He never expected something like this. Swallowing down the guilt he's feeling, because wow is that new? Over having failed his friend, Nezu glances over at Aizawa from across his desk. Bringing his paws together, he starts the conversation with a grim expression, or as grim of an expression as his face can manage. Do you know why I have called you today, Aizawa-kun? With a weary sigh, Aizawa levels him with a deadpan look. Just get it over with, Nezu. I need to take a nap. Nezu pursed his lips to keep himself from snarling. He's always overlooked Aizawa's behavior because as gruff and rude as he was, he's always managed to bring results, and because he wasn't really interested in dictating how others lived their lives as long as no one was hurt. But maybe he should have paid more attention to it. After all, the way someone expresses themselves tells a lot about them. and Aizawa always looked like a sleep-deprived hobo that wandered onto school grounds. While an effective attire for an underground hero looking to be overlooked and underestimated, it might be considered questionable for a teacher to wear. But then again, hindsight is 20/20. One thing's for certain, though. He's going to be spending the next few weeks going through Aizawa's actions as a teacher while he was employed by UA. I have called you in to discuss the expulsion of student Midoriya Izuku. What of it? Aizawa asks, looking like he'd rather be elsewhere. Pretty cut and clear as far as I'm concerned. Not only did the kid not have any potential, but he assaulted a teacher and classmate using his quirk. Nezu's eyes narrow. When the time comes, I hope you can come up with a better justification than that. Aizawa looks more alert at that. When the time comes, do you expect the kid to come seeking revenge? I doubt you'd bring it up if you didn't think he was dangerous enough to watch out for. Oh, he's dangerous. All right. Nezu mutters under his breath, his hackles raised. Let me be frank about your situation, Aizawa-kun. Not only did you expel the successor and protege of the symbol of peace dash, I knew he was connected to All Might, probably expected to coast by on his mentor's fame. Aizawa drawls. Not only did you expel the successor and protege of the symbol of peace, Nezu continues where he was cut off, glaring at Aizawa as he does so. You insulted and degraded a student, used your capture scarf on said student, who need I remind you is a civilian, and used your quirk on the same student with no justifiable reason. You then reprimand and expel said student when his quirk has obviously undergone a stress-induced evolution to help its user in what it perceived to be a threat. And then, as if it wasn't enough, you do absolutely nothing to reprimand a student who actually was about to use his quirk to assault a classmate. Throughout his whole rant, Nezu's voice became louder and louder, until he was practically screaming at a cowering Aizawa that was terrified at seeing his boss this pissed. Tesh, I'm sure it wasn't that bad? Seeing Nezu's glare intensify, Aizawa tries to hastily correct himself. I mean, he was just a kid, right? I doubt he'd know all of this. I'm sure UA will be able to out of this fine. This time, Nezu is unable to stop the snarl that breaks out, and he takes a sick sense of pleasure at seeing how Aizawa squirms in fear. All Might, the symbol of fucking peace, was supposed to teach this year, but he's not. Do you want to know why? Because some self-centered asshole decided to expel his fucking protege for no fucking reason. Seeing Aizawa look smug when he mentioned that All Might will no longer be teaching at the school, Nezu fucking loses it. Aizawa can have some sort of petty grudge or one-sided rivalry with All Might as much as he wants, but letting it affect his work like this. Nezu decides at that moment that he wants Aizawa to suffer as much as Nezu is having to deal with the fallout of this whole mess. Aizawa, have you heard of the hero Dreadnought? He asks, his voice sweet and full of anticipation. Of course I've heard of Dreadnought, Aizawa answers with a scoff. Which underground hero hasn't? The man's a legend, what with how he gutted the underworld. It will take decades before it can even begin to recover. When All Might first started out, he felt that he could be doing more to fight crime. But he didn't want to do so as All Might, considering he has an image, people looking up to him. So he comes up with the identity of Dreadnought. Aizawa gapes at him, sputtering out, "Boo, but he's an idiot. The buffoon just poses around in front of cameras. There's no way someone like him can be Dreadnought." "Oh, he most definitely is, I assure you. I helped him make the identity after all." Nezu grins wide, enjoying the distress he's causing. Usually, he tries not to give people an existential crisis because that would be rude and he needs to set a good example as the principal. But just this once, he decides he will push. He hasn't gotten this euphoric feeling of desperation and fear in a long, long time, and he's missed it. He decides to just take some time to savor Aizawa's misery. Let it settle in before he decides to go for the kill. Now, putting aside the matter of Dreadnought, as well as the matter of the media disaster that will happen when people find that the only reason All Might still isn't teaching here is you, there is one more final matter I am pleased to inform you of. What is it? Aizawa cautiously asks. Why, his mother, of course. Aizawa blinks, trying to consider why the kid's mother would be relevant, crossing out possibilities as he goes. He eventually settles on the most likely one. Is she a villain? Nedzu can't help it, he really can't, but he starts cackling. Oh, how that would have made it so much simpler for you. Nervously swallowing, Aizawa asks, not entirely sure if he wants to know. And why would that be the case? With a wide, predatory grin, enough so to make Aizawa remember that the being sitting in front of him isn't human, Nedzu answers. Why, it's because his mother is none other than the Dragon of Mizudafu, of course. Aizawa freezes in place. He is so utterly, completely fucked. Every hero and police officer out there has heard about the Dragon of Mizudafu, a lawyer that seems to grudge against incompetent or corrupt heroes, having been the cause of hundreds of heroes going out of business or being fired worldwide. While calling a lawyer of all things something like the Dragon of Mizudafu might seem weird, it's a title she earned when she took down the #1 hero in Brazil, Anaconda. And now, Aizawa went and broke a bunch of laws in the process of targeting and expelling her son. He is so fucking screwed. And the only way even a small part of him could survive her wrath is if Nedzu and Yue decide to plead his case on his behalf. That hope is dashed down almost immediately. She has expressed her intention to pursue legal action against you, and after discussion, the two of us have come to an accord. She leaves Yue alone, and in return, I don't find or prepare a defense for you. It was quite beneficial for both of us, if I might say. Well, that was a lie. He hasn't yet had the pleasure of speaking with her, but Aizawa doesn't need to know that. Nor does he need to know that, unfortunately, Nedzu will have to help provide him with a legal defense, as stated in his contract. But what he doesn't know will most definitely hurt him, and that's the point. His reckless and selfish actions have caused him and Yue to stake their reputation on him, and clash with the Dragon of Mizudafu, a clash that Nedzu is smart enough to realize he will lose. After brainstorming and trying to come up with a hero name for a good half hour, Izuku gives up when his best ideas revolve around the fact that he has green hair. Things like Verdant or Viridian sound super cool, and if it was a vigilante name or something, it would have been perfect. But for All Might's apprentice? For the successor of the symbol of peace? It's not enough, so he decides to ask All Might for help. How did you pick your name, Sensei? Me? It's not going to be as inspiring a story as you might hope, young Midoriya, he replies, chuckling fondly, though whether it's because of Izuku or a fond memory he recalled is unknown. Irrelevant, he reminds himself. Focus on the task at hand. I wanted my name to be a promise, that no matter what, I will try to save people with all my might, that I will fight to protect them with all my might. That's not remotely helpful. Don't get him wrong, he absolutely will freak out later over the fact that he knows why All Might is called, well, All Might, but it doesn't help him. He doesn't have a grand promise to make and affirm to the public. Yes, he will fight with everything he has to save and protect them, but that is a given as far as Izuku is concerned. Then a different branch of thought occurs to him. All Might isn't the only person he's succeeding. There were 7 other people before All Might, so maybe he can try and use their names for inspiration? What about the past user of One for All? All Might coughs out blood, seemingly caught off guard. Waving away Izuku's frantic apologies, All Might asks, "What about them, my boy?" Twisting his hands, Izuku looks at him with concern, before relenting. What were their hero names? I thought that, considering that technically I'm their successor as well, I might as well try and take inspiration from them as well, and not just you. I don't know what I was thinking. I should have known it was a bad idea. I didn't mean to imply that you weren't a good enough mentor, and I need to replace you or upset you by bringing them up. It won't happen again, I promise. Izuku shouts out, bowing in the hopes that All Might wouldn't be too upset. He hears Sensei sigh. You truly are the prince of nonsense, aren't you? Izuku decides it's probably a good idea to apologize again when he's lightly chopped on the head. You really need to stop apologizing so much, young man. I wasn't upset, just startled at how sudden that was. I don't mind telling you about the past users. In fact, as your mentor and predecessor, it's my responsibility to do so. Leaning back, Sensei lets out another sigh. Well, truth be told, I don't know much about the past users to start with. Around half of them were from before the heroics industry was properly established. The first person that I know for a fact to become a licensed hero was my master, Shimura Nana. Izuku leans forward in anticipation and excitement. Who wouldn't be excited to learn more about All Might's master? What was she like? She was an amazing hero and an even better person. Her main philosophy was that, as heroes, we shouldn't just aim to save a person's body, but their soul as well. Most of my persona as All Might was in homage to her, you know? My hair tufts resembling her tendency to throw out peace signs, to her tendency to smile. Sensei smiles, fondness, and pure, unadulterated awe on his face as he spoke. I started smiling to pay my respects to her initially, and then to hide my fear later on. But master, she smiled because she wanted everyone to be happy. No matter how much I wanted to be like her, I was just an imitation. Glancing over to Izuku, he says a statement that shakes him to his core. Well, not really, but it does still shake him enough for him to start crying, though that's not saying much. But you smile so easily, and you do it to help others smile as well. You remind me a lot of her, you know? What was her name? Izuku asks with a sniff of his nose, trying to rein in his emotions because he can't just start sobbing every time he gets a compliment. Damn it. Rhea, the floating hero. Like the Greek Titan? All Might smiles. Yeah, like the Greek Titan. Rhea was the mother of the gods and the Titaness of comfort and good living. Master said she chose that as her name because she wanted people to be able to depend on her and find comfort in her presence. That's actually a good idea on how to go about choosing a hero name. Not what he aims to do like All Might, but what he hopes that people will feel about him. Okay, cool, one problem solved, another created. What does he want people to feel when they see him? After thinking about it for a few minutes and not getting closer to an answer, he decides to try a different approach. What would he have wanted to feel when he saw a hero? What was it about All Might that enraptured him so much that others failed to grasp? The answer hits him like a truck. The only thing he'd ever wanted was for them to believe in him, for them to help keep alive the little hope he had. And whereas others looked at All Might and saw peace, or safety, or strength, Izuku saw hope. Hope that useless, quirkless Deku might be able to achieve something. Because if All Might was risking his life, if All Might was defying the odds time and time again, what's to stop him from doing something as mundane as work towards his dreams? So he decides he's figured out what he wants people to feel when they see him. He wants to inspire the same hope in others that All Might was able to inspire in him. A quick shuffle through the potential names that could convey that message, he finally comes to an answer. Staring All Might straight in the eye, Izuku gives him his answer with the most confident tone he's ever used. Chapter 7. Clown-to-Clown Communication. Izuku was rather surprised when, following their long conversation about his hero name, rather than hurry back to his agency or home, Sensei told him to change into workout clothes and follow him to show him his training exercise for the time being. Looking around, Izuku wonders why All Might brought him to the public park nearest his home for training. Shrugging, he starts doing his stretches as Sensei starts shuffling around inside his duffel bag. All right, take this and wrap it around your hands. Saying so, Sensei gives him those hand wrap things boxers use. Taking another one out, he starts wrapping it around his hand to show Izuku how to do so. All right, so this is what you're going to do. You're going to punch a tree, and then you're going to catch the leaves that fall down. As Izuku tries to ask Sensei why he's about to fight a tree, Sensei punches one, his hands moving almost too fast to see, catching each and every leaf that fell. The point of this young Midoriya is twofold. Exercises such as this will improve your spatial awareness, as well as help you be more in control of your body. After all, hitting someone too hard or too fast, even without a quirk, can cause severe damage. Turning back towards him, Sensei unwraps the cloth and shoulders his duffel bag. I will be seeing you in a week, young man. Try and catch 10 leaves by then. It's been a few days since All Might stopped by, and Izuku is ready to collapse. From reading through the legal documents regarding the apprenticeship, which his mom apparently knew about, meaning she knows that Yagi-sensei is All Might and when did that happen, to the information about different martial arts and fighting styles, to the workout and leaf exercise, Izuku has never been more tired. But he has also never been more fired up, either. But that doesn't mean a break isn't something he would appreciate. So when one of his former classmates invites him to hang out at the arcade, he happily accepts. Midoriya, over here. A cheerful pink girl waves him over. Deciding it would be polite, he waves back with a smile. Once he gets in front of the group, he gives a short bow. Thank you for inviting me. Our last interaction was under less than pleasant circumstances, so I was unable to properly introduce myself. My name is Midoriya Izuku. I enjoy drawing in my free time. It is a pleasure to make your acquaintance. You don't need to be formal, Karo. I'm Azuitsuyu, but please call me Tsu. I tend to be blunt, so I apologize in advance. The pink girl from before jumps up, throwing an arm into the air. I'm Ishido Mina, the DDR champion at this arcade. One by one, the rest of the group introduces themselves, and Izuku makes it a point to memorize their names and the little tidbits they share about themselves. They may not be his classmates anymore, but that doesn't mean they can't be friends. Far he's concerned, Aizawa can take his whole lone wolf bullshit and fuck off. When the only person remaining who hasn't introduced themselves is the guy with half-white half-red hair, he stops staring at everything around him with a vaguely confused look and levels Izuku with an intense stare. My name is Todoroki Shoto. I like cold soba. Now, while Izuku would ignore people looking at him weird, he's used to it by this point. The look Todoroki was giving him was different. One that Izuku has often seen on himself on late nights, when he's half hysteric and determined to understand a specific quirk, absolutely refusing to back down no matter what. He's looking at Izuku like he's a puzzle to solve, and Izuku can't figure out why. He's barely been at UA long enough to establish his status as a cryptid. But he doesn't have time for that because he's immediately drawn towards the DDR pad by Ishido, Kaminari standing to the side taking bets while Kirishima encourages both of them to kick ass. Whose ass is he supposed to kick? The DDR pad? And as soon as that's done, he's distracted by Kirishima, dragged into a very heated debate about whether or not Star and Stripes can beat DC's Superman. And Izuku is appalled at how Kirishima can spout such nonsense about how Superman would win because Star and Stripes wouldn't have kryptonite, which is just wrong. She has a Class 9 reality warping quirk. What's stopping her from, warping reality and creating kryptonite? After running around and messing around so much, they got hungry and headed to get some food, Izuku and Kirishima arguing the whole time. And when Kaminari bet him 200 yen that he couldn't fit 15 dumplings in his mouth, Izuku was quick to accept. A lot can be said about Izuku, but no one has ever accused him of backing down. His mother didn't raise a quitter after all. Are you doing all right after the whole expulsion thing, Green? Swallowing the dumplings, Izuku turns towards Jairu. I'm doing fine. My mentor said he's reaching out to his contacts to get me enrolled in a school with common sense, so that's pretty nice. How were classes for you guys? Ishido, upon hearing his question, groans and dramatically flops onto the table. It was awful, Midori. Aizawa seemed pissed and was snapping at all of us. And worse, the heroics class was cancelled for the next 2 months. It's awful. Curious, he turns to Jairu, hoping her hearing might have let her in on the answer. Do you know why that was? She just shrugs. Nothing interesting. Something about issues with staff and scheduling issues. Collapsing into his bed with a groan, Izuku thinks back on the day. He has friends. For the first time in years, he has friends, and it was the most fun he's had as well. As he drifts off to sleep, Izuku has a smile on his face. Things are looking up for him. Though, weirdly enough, he wakes up as soon as he falls asleep, his body feeling no different. He's weirded out even further when he looks around him. only to see endless black fog in all directions. Man, hell sure does look different to what I imagined, he says with a groan. And it's true. He never thought of hell as an endless black fog, though he supposes that it makes sense. Being stripped of your senses and forced to reside in a void on his own for an eternity. It would drive anyone insane, let alone someone that gets bored as quick as him. He wonders if this is what hell looks like for everyone, or if this is a hell tailor-made to make him suffer. Kid, what the fuck? Oh, he was muttering, though he's not sure how that's possible when he can't feel anything, his mouth included. He wonders who that voice was. Weird voice. Where are we? Is this hell? Behind you, kid. Izuku turns around to see 7 people and a fire pit. No, wait, that's just a literal pile of floating fire. Cool. And no, this isn't hell. Izuku droops a little at that. The same voice from the last 2 times spoke up again, the bald guy in the middle. Why do you seem disappointed? Seeing no harm in being honest, Izuku answered. I always figured hell would be full of assholes that I can mess with for the rest of eternity. So what is this? Purgatory? The people in front of him slump forward in despair and exasperation. He's pretty sure he hears one of them mutter not another one, but he ignores that to pay attention to the white-haired guy on the opposite end of the fire. You're in the shadow realm now, Jimbo? Izuku nods his head. I guess that makes sense. Both of them ignore the screams of how from the rest. What's with this smoke? Anyway, can you set it on fire? Sighing in obvious disappointment, the white-haired guy shakes his head. Unfortunately not. It was one of the first things I tried. Pointing towards the floating fire in confusion, Izuku asks, Then what's with that fire over there? HM? Oh, that's just All Might. I'm sorry, it's who now? Is All Might dead? Then why is he a floating pile of fire? How come Izuku isn't? The lady that was standing next to the fire walks over to Whitehair and smacks him over the head. Stop freaking out the kid. Turning towards him, her scowl morphs into a gentle smile. Hey little 9, I'm 7, also known as Shimura Nana the Flow Dash. The floating hero, Ria? Smiling wider, she puts her hands on her hips. Yep, that's me all right. Izuku's mind races to try and figure out what the hell's going on when he catches on to the exact words Ria used. She called him Little 9, just like One for All does. Not to mention the presence of Ria, the 7th user, and the pile of fire that's apparently All Might, the 8th user in this place. Are we inside One for All? Whitehair starts cackling. I knew it. I knew he'd figure it out. Pay the fuck up third. Instead of waiting for whatever payment he won from that bet, he turns back towards Izuku. Hey, little 9th. I'm Yoichi, the 1st user. The idiot sulking behind us is Kudo, the 2nd. The other idiot that just lost a bet is 3rd. Pointing towards the guy that's just kinda laying there on the floor, Yoichi continues. The guy having an existential crisis over there is Shinomori Hikage, the 4th user. The bald guy takes Yoichi's introductions. And I'm Banjo Daigoro, the 5th and coolest user. And the 6th. Snorting, Ria smiles at him. Ignore dark and brooding over there. As I said before, I'm Shimura Nana, the 7th user. And that pile of flame is Yagi Tashinori, the 8th user. The name swirling in his head, he bows. It's an honor to meet all of you. I am Midoriya Izuku, the 9th user. Throwing an arm over his shoulder, Yoichi smiles at him. It's good to meet you as well, 9. Though I'm afraid this wasn't just a meet and greet. Removing his arm from Izuku's shoulder, Yoichi goes to sit in a throne-like chair, which Izuku swears wasn't there before. The sight of all the past users, even Flame Might, sitting in thrones that are positioned in a circle around him, Izuku feels like he's on trial for high crimes and misdemeanors. You've been able to use our quirk through a mixture of One for All sentience and the 2nd's projection, but that isn't something that can continue. Why not? It's been working so far. One for all is a stockpile quirk that grows in power every time it's used or passed on. And it's a quirk that your body is not suited for or used to, which makes sense. It's not a quirk that he was born with, so his body doesn't have anything sort of checks or defense mechanisms. And he says as much. Because I wasn't born with this quirk, I don't have the secondary mutative traits found in other quirks. Precisely, Yoichi shouts, his face showing a wide, pleased grin. But it's a time-consuming process for the quirk to slowly assimilate with your body, but one that can't happen if you keep distracting it. No ever-growing stockpile, no ever-adaptive body, no growth. Wait, so I just don't interact with one for all from now on? Of course not, Yoichi says. Just until your body fully sinks in with the quirk. That makes sense, he guesses. So I need to either use projection the same way Second did, or get used to the enhancement aspect quickly? Not exactly. When one for all force activated projection to save your body from hurting itself, it pushed that to the forefront so much that anything else is out of your grasp. What? Why would it do that? I thought the primary function of one for all was to stockpile energy and use it to enhance its user. That's true, and for any other user before you it would have been the case. But we've hit singularity with you, so it's different now. Just how different is something we're still trying to figure out. Seeing that Izuku still looked confused, Yoichi decided to try a different approach. Think of it like a game download queue. One for all, the main game is supposed to download first, followed by the DLC. Roughly 3% of one for all has installed so far. Normally, that would mean you can use 3% of the quirk. Since projection was forcibly manifested, however, all of that loading progress was transferred to it. One for all was pushed down the queue, and the others were made a priority. Wait, does that mean I'll get the quirks of the other users before I get the strength? Afraid so, little ninth. Okay, it's not fine, but it's okay. What are the other quirks, and at what % will I unlock them? Well, the strength is locked until a little over 50%. The other quirks manifest at the choice of either the original user or one for all's wish once the % requirement is met. 5%, 8%, 10%, 15%, and 25% are the benchmarks at which they can be unlocked. The 5% one is close to manifesting then. Which one will it be? Yoichi shakes his head. Not just close to manifesting. You've hit 5% today. It's why we brought in here. Oh, Izuku says, sounding just as lost as he feels. But I thought you said that I only reached 3%. You had 3% when projection manifested, yes. Pausing to see if Izuku had any other questions, Yoichi continues. And about which quirk you'll get next, we're not really sure. You already have mine and 2 NDs. Third didn't want to give you his quirk until the day you got expelled, after which he expressed interest in you having his quirk. Fourth and sixth decided to hold off on giving their quirks to let you have a more physical quirk, and fifth and seventh have been fighting over which one of their quirks you should get. So, third, fifth, and seventh want to give me their quirk? Why? Yoichi grins wide, his voice sounding smug when he speaks. You remember that bet that I just won against third? Well, guess what the stakes were? I don't know. I mean, what could you have bet? I already have your quirk, right? Snorting, Ria directs a teasing grin towards Yoichi and third. Third bet that you wouldn't be able to figure out where this is without being told, and he placed his quirk on the line. Yoichi agreed to shut up until you found a successor as his bet. Scoffing, third leans forward. Don't twist my words, seventh. Turning towards Izuku, third starts speaking. I disapproved of seventh. She was too soft. I initially disliked eighth for the same reason, but he went and proved me wrong when he got up with half his organs dangling out of his stomach to punch that fucker's head off 5 years ago. And you proved me wrong the moment you chose to take your teacher down with you. Drag him down to the depths and drown him with you, right? You're pretty fucking ruthless when you want to be, kid, and that's only been reaffirmed the more of your memories we've seen glimpses of. Seventh and some of the others might say shit about showing compassion and love to save people, but you know better, don't you? You were a part of the dregs of society. You know damn well that the only way to save people sometimes is to stab a fucker. While Izuku tries to formulate some sort of response to all of that, Fifth interrupts with a shout. My Quirk's cool as fuck. Cool little dude like you needs a cool little quirk like this. Don't you think? Ria turns to glare at Fifth. Shut up, Banjo. He's basically my grandson. He's getting my quirk first. He's her what now? Yoichi clears his throat. Now that we know that Third is serious about giving his quirk, I think the answer on whose quirk Ninth gets is obvious. Wait, they were just going to move on from the grandson thing? Is no one going to even try and clarify? Okay then. Guess there's nothing to do but move on to the confusion of what Yoichi actually said. Izuku looks on in confusion, as the rest of them slowly start nodding, before turning to Third. Izuku, not having anything else to do, and having already given up getting a straight answer from any of them, follows suit. Alright, so here's the deal. My meta ability, especially after being powered up by One for All, is strong and deadly if used wrong. It's called adaptive embodiment. You can pick a part of you that you feel defines you and embody it. The effects of the quirk vary depending on what you embody and how you view it. When I was alive, I could only embody a single aspect. Now that it's powered by One for All, that's increased significantly. Oh cool, guess he was wrong. He is going to be getting a straight answer, though one thing does confuse Izuku about the explanation. That's a really cool and versatile quirk, but how is it deadly? Grinning sharply, Third responds. Because the last time I used it, I decided to embody my anger, took down dozens of lackeys, and badly injured the villain I was fighting. I never even noticed how much damage I was doing, or how many limbs I lost during that fight. Yeah, that would definitely make it deadly. There is one thing about that whole explanation that was bothering him though. Your quirk, is it the reason All Might can transform after his injury? Ria snorts at that. You'll never guess what he accidentally embodied. It was nostalgia, the big oaf. Ha! Izuku shouts. I knew it. I knew that his transformation had nothing to do with One for All. Chapter 8. Quirk's haunted. What? Loads gun. Quirk's haunted. Toshinori blearily reaches out to the table, picking up his phone. Hello. Honestly, he gets so little rest as is. If this is anything short of All for One coming back from the dead, he's gonna throw the collar into the fucking sun. All Might. He immediately takes it back, overcome with worry. Forget interrupting his sleep. Young Midoriya could ask for his remaining lung and Toshinori would gladly give it, if only for the fact that the kid refuses to reach out for help unless absolutely needed. Not to mention that it's been months since his boy has called him by his hero name. Young Midoriya? Are you alright? Do you need me to come over? Even as he asks, Toshinori doesn't wait for answers. He opens his balcony door, buffs up, and jumps. His boy could be in danger, and Toshinori will be damned if he doesn't rip whichever fucker is responsible for that in half. A lot of people don't think he's capable of such actions, but they forget that he hunted down All for One, not for justice but for revenge. If someone found out about his connection to the boy and decided to target him to get to Toshinori, he is going to make them regret their existence. No, I'm fine, it's just. Landing on a random rooftop, he lets go of his form, taking in a deep breath. The kid's safe. He is safe and not in any danger. Toshinori can calm down. It's fine, my boy. You can tell me what's wrong, he says as softly as he can. And he is filled with pride and contentment when he hears young Midoriya start calming down. After all the months they've spent together, young Midoriya seems more comforted in the presence of Toshinori instead of All Might. Quirk's haunted. What? I'm afraid I don't understand. Young Midoriya. One for All. It's haunted. What? Having changed into his workout clothes, Izuku stands in the warehouse Yagi-sensei leads him to. He's not gonna lie, he's really nervous. Sensei, in his skinny form, absolutely drowning in his costume, turns to him from the other side of the room. Alright, to summarize, you can't use the stockpile, and are stuck with the second's projection and the third's adaptive embodiment. Izuku nods, too nervous and jittery to say anything else. And adaptive embodiment is not only powerful, but dangerous as well. Izuku nods once more. Sighing, Sensei rests his hands on his hips. Well then, let's get this started. Fire up the quirk. If anything goes wrong, I am here to stop things. Nodding again, Izuku closes his eyes. From the description third gave, whatever he wants to embody needs to be something that Izuku wholeheartedly believes defines him. The issue is that he doesn't know what defines him. After all, a definition implies an inability to adapt and change, and Izuku knows that doesn't apply to him. He's not confident like Katsuki or All Might. He's not calm and collected like Gang Orca or Best Jeanist. He's not anything grand. He's just Izuku, quirkless, useless Deku. He doesn't have any remarkable traits. Though, thinking on it more, wasn't that a trait in and of itself? The fact that he blames himself for being quirkless, blames himself for being useless. He carries a lot of self-hatred, and he has no trouble admitting that, at least to himself. After all, unlike Katsuki, Izuku at least has an ounce of self-awareness. So he has his self-hatred as his defining trait, he guesses? But that sounds wrong. Incomplete. Sure, he's carried that hatred for over a decade, but that wasn't all he carried with him. He's also carried hope for a brighter future. For as long as he can remember, self-hatred and a stubborn hope have been his lifelong companions, like the angel and devil on his shoulders. Different yet connected, intertwined. Throughout every moment of hatred, he's had the small stubborn hope to keep him moving. The thought of sure, it's awful now and I hate it, but it won't always be like this. And throughout every moment of hope he's had, his self-hatred was there, eager to keep him grounded. To remind him that just because things might be different in the future, doesn't mean they are now. So he decides, let's embody that. His hatred towards his past, towards his cowardice, towards himself, and his hope that in the future, things will be better, that he will be better. He feels something crawl along his skin, feels his feet and hands elongate and sharpen, his hair ruffle and be pushed aside as something grows from under it. Opening his eyes, he notices that his clothes are gone. Considering adaptive embodiment is technically a transformation quirk, he guesses that it's par for the course. Shrugging it off, he takes a moment to look at his changed appearance. His skin turned a dark blue, and when he tries to pinch himself, he feels his skin to be much harder and denser. There are scales on his chest and arms, further bolstering his likely boosted defense. There are circular blades on his shoulders, as well as a sharp pincer-type thing on his chin. On top of that, the fingers on his hands and feet turned into long, sharp claws. When, remembering his earlier discomfort, he reaches towards his head, he feels weird feathery horns, starting at the back of his head and extending to the front of his face. The change that stands out the most is the glowing lines crisscrossing his body. He remembers these vaguely. They showed up the first time he used one for all in the entrance exam. Except then, it was a beautiful mix of red and silver. But now it's a bright, glowing blue. All Might's laugh turns his attention away from his self-examination. I see that you've been able to use the quirk. All Might's grin, which has till now been a source of hope for Izuku, sends chills down his spine. Let's see if you're able to fight like that. After a good hour of Izuku getting his ass handed to him, All Might deflated. This could work. Your strength and speed don't get a big enough boost to really matter, but your durability is truly impressive. Not to mention, the scrapes and bruises that did get past your defense were healed on their own in minutes. Izuku, still in his transformed form, nods in understanding. That was the conclusion he came to as well. Any ideas on what to test out next, Sensei? Yagi-sensei gives him a teasing smile. And here I thought you would already have theories to test out. Coughing awkwardly, Izuku turns his head away. I do, but I'm not sure if it's smart to try them out now. considering they consist of pushing and testing the limits of the quirk. Like, what happens if I embody contradicting traits, like courage and fear, or rage and acceptance? Do the traits being negative or positive have any long-lasting effect? Will there be a difference between similar traits? Like, will anger and rage have the same effect? If not, can they be used simultaneously? Giving him a warm smile, Sensei crosses his arms in front of him. All right, I get it. Other than a more detailed strength and mobility test, we should test your other quirk. Projection. Yes, can you use projection while transformed? You must be aware of what cards are in your hand. Izuku blinks. I didn't even think of that. How didn't I think of that? It's so obvious a thing to test. Complaining aside, Izuku concentrates on his other quirk and tries using it, only for him to use both of his quirks at the same time. This whole having multiple quirks thing is going to take some time to get used to. Before he can stop, it settles down, a weight being felt on his shoulders and back. He rolls his shoulder, confused. He freezes. Why does he feel a second set of arms resting on his shoulders? The next day, Izuku shows up at the warehouse with a skip in his step. Beaming when he spots Yagi-sensei, he waves. Hey sensei, what are we doing today? Ruffling his hair with a grin, he responds. Well, your provisional license exam is this coming Monday, so we have a whole week for it. Izuku freezes. What? A week? He can't do this. He's going to fail. Completely ignoring or not noticing Izuku's freak out, Sensei just continues speaking. We'll be leaving to Island on Friday to put you in touch with a few contacts of mine and get you support gear. He's going to meet David Shield in 5 days. In the depths of One for All, within the void claimed by the vestiges, mad cackling can be heard. Growling, Third pounces on Yoichi, trying to strangle him. Will you shut up? You've been laughing for days. Wiping away tears, Yoichi chuckles. You! He stops to take a breath, wheezing in the middle. You gave him this big speech about how it's deadly and should be used with care, and he just uses it. No precautions or anything. An eighth just went with it. Those two are my kind of guys. Second stands beside them, watching as Third strangles a laughing Yoichi and just pinches his nose. When he found the fucker in that bank vault, Kudo should have just killed him and be done with it. At least then his afterlife wouldn't be this. Getting off the plane, Izuku and All Might both in their hero forms. As they do so, they look around. A blonde girl his age on a pogo stick hops over to them, before jumping onto All Might. Uncle Toshi, it's been ages since you've visited. Laughing, Sensei twirls the girl around. Melissa, it's nice to see you. And you've grown. Jumping back onto the ground, she grins at him with her hands on her hip. My inventions are close to outshining Dad. You sure you don't want to swap support engineers? With a booming laugh, All Might shakes his head. No, it's not needed. Your talents would be wasted on an old man like me. Though I do have a favor to ask if you don't mind. Sure thing. What is it? Gesturing to Izuku and bringing Melissa's attention to him, All Might speaks. This young man here is my apprentice. I was hoping to help him find a talented support engineer. Giving him a friendly smile, she holds her hand out to him. Hi, it's nice to meet you. I'm Melissa Shield. Nice to meet you too. I'm Midoriya Izuku. Once they reached her lab, All Might left to catch up with his friend, leaving Melissa and I alone in her lab. So, what's your quirk? What kind of support equipment are you looking for? Izuku regards her. Normally, he wouldn't even consider doing something like this. But Izuku's calling is quirk analysis. He was planning to go the support analyst route back before he met All Might. So he knows how important working with correct information is. For an analyst, using incorrect information could result in providing advice that is harmful or dangerous. And it's all the more risky for a support engineer to work with incorrect information. So when Melissa, his support engineer, and All Might's niece, asks for information, he decides to tell her. Ah, Are there any recording devices? Nodding with a look of understanding, she goes over to her computer and types something in. Okay, the cameras are off. I assume you would have this information recorded as little as possible. Nodding, Izuku lets go of adaptive embodiment, turning back to normal. Melissa lets out a hum. So, about your quirk? And Izuku tells her. About how he was quirkless. About one for all. About projection and adaptive embodiment. Chapter 9, Provisional License Exam. Melissa hums thoughtfully. I see. This is a rather interesting and difficult case, she mutters. What sort of gear are you looking for right now? I mean, you'll definitely need something to help you withstand the stockpile aspect once that kicks in. For training, if nothing else. But I'm not sure how I can help now. Scratching his head, he diverts his eyes to a poster of some sports team Melissa has on her wall. Well, my skin is tough enough, and I have a good enough healing factor that armor is counterintuitive. But until the stockpile aspect of my quirk awakens, I'm severely lacking in offense. Moving over to one of her tables absolutely covered in papers, Melissa rummages through them. Finding what she was looking for a moment later, she starts writing down something. Once she came to a lull in her note-taking, she looked up at him. I can have the prototype ready to test by tomorrow evening. Is this all you needed? Or was there something else? Digging through his bag, Izuku pulls out a couple of his notebooks, specifically the ones that have notes about himself. There is, actually. All Might mention that he wanted me to have a second hero license, one as Izuku Midoriya, not his apprentice. I was planning on getting an underground license for that one, and since this is supposed to be both underground and a separate identity, I can't use my transformation. This is the information I have on my legally registered quirk, the things not mentioned there, as well as a few sketches for my costume. Melissa grabs the notebooks and starts flipping through them, her eyes lighting up. Oh, this is brilliant. Half of the things you've mentioned and requested here are just theoretical. Blushing, Izuku tries to apologize, only to be cut off by a cackle. Don't worry about it. This is the most I've ever looked forward to a project. Izuku sits on the roof of the building, staring at the stars. He's always had a fascination with stars and constellations. They've been a comforting presence to him since he was a kid. Sleeping under them is the easiest way to rid himself of his worries. After all, no matter how badly he messes up, the stars will always be here shining bright. And how bad can it be if he can still sleep under the stars? And even if this wasn't a good luck charm for him, it feels appropriate. Looking at the constellation era, the constellation of the altar, the ones that the Greek gods used to take their vows before their war against the Titans, feels appropriate before his debut at the provisional license tomorrow. Closing his eyes, he takes a deep breath to center himself. Focusing his attention back on the Era constellation, Izuku speaks with bright eyes. I will become a hero, one that people can look at and feel safe, one that people can look at and feel inspired, one that people can look at and feel hope. I pledge this with all my strength and heart. No matter how many times I stumble, I will get back up. This I swear with all that I am and all that I will become. This I swear as the future symbol of hope. This I swear as Hestia. Hello, I am Kodaira Saori, the HPSC representative here to administer the provisional license exam. Please head into the exam hall indicated on your entrance passes for your room number. Following the written test, there will be physical and written tests as well. Obviously, if you fail the written and physical tests, you will be disqualified and won't be eligible to take part in the practical exam. After that, everyone quickly makes their ways to the written tests. He was initially a bit nervous because people kept staring at him, the Kodaira-san included. Actually, it was Kodaira-san staring the most. But the longer he sits the tests, the more relaxed Izuku becomes. The written test isn't much harder than the UA entrance exam, and he aced that. The physical test that happened after that was just a joke. Lifting a few weights and running a bit to prove that he's in good health was a breeze after the training All Might put him through. Not to mention the fact that he's more than twice as strong in his transformed state. Now to just hope that the practical part is just as easy. Welcome back, applicants. The practical portion of the exam is a team-oriented defense. You have all been assigned teams based on your schools. Each team will need to protect their assigned base. Inside each base is a table with a briefcase on it. If you lose the briefcase, you are eliminated. If your base is destroyed, you are eliminated. If you are knocked out, tied up, and kept prisoner in another team's base at the end of the exam, you are eliminated. The exam ends when there is only 20 of you left, Kodaira-san says. Well, guess he jinxed himself. Though he does wonder, is the fact that he's going to be running this exercise solo an oversight by the exam committee? Or are they being harsher on him for being All Might's apprentice? Shrugging it off as inconsequential, he follows the stream of examinees, eyes scanning the horizon as they approach the arena. The large gate ahead opens into the arena, and the vast expanse comes into view. The arena was an impressive and rugged landscape which, Izuka guesses, was designed to test the scope of their abilities in as realistic of an environment as possible. The ground was a mix of uneven terrain, with rocky outcrops and dusty patches creating natural obstacles. Scattered throughout the area were a few dilapidated buildings, their walls cracked and partially collapsed, providing cover and strategic points for both defense and attack. Above, the sky was overcast, casting a grayish pall over the scene that added to the atmosphere of urgency and tension. The occasional gust of wind swept through, stirring up dust and debris, which would undoubtedly affect visibility and movement. Each base, he noticed, was strategically positioned within the arena, serving as a focal point for the defending teams. Externally, the bases presented a range of architectural styles and conditions, each designed to challenge and test the applicant's defensive strategies. From dilapidated concrete bunkers to old, partially collapsed factories, fortified residential structures. It was obvious that each base was designed to not only provide physical defense, but to also present a variety of strategic challenges, requiring the examinees to adapt their tactics and work effectively as a team to protect their assigned locations. But considering that he doesn't have any teammates to work with, he's going to be work double time to take advantage of any and all natural defenses his building might have. He glanced at his entrance pass, noting the base assignment for his team. Though he was technically alone in this exercise, the map provided a clear layout of his designated building. He hoped the building's features could be leveraged to his advantage, even if he had no teammates to coordinate with. As he approached the building, its features became increasingly apparent. The structure, formerly a warehouse, now appeared worn and weathered. Its once sturdy walls were marred by deep cracks, and the roof had partially caved in, leaving it vulnerable. Despite its battered condition, the building's remnants of reinforced concrete and iron bars hinted at its former strength, suggesting it could serve as a formidable defensive position if utilized effectively. The warehouse seemed to have been built on flat, empty land, with nothing around it on most sides. Thankfully, the rear of the building was blocked by a large pile of rocks. He won't be able to defend it in the position it's currently in. He needs to block out at least one more side. Looking around for a way to do that, he spots a building a couple hundred meters away. As he stares at, he feels his mouth stretching into a grin, an idea forming in his head. Rolling his shoulders, he flexes his wing arms. He's going to need to be quick about this, otherwise he'd be leaving his own base open for too long. Bending his knees, he waits for Kodaira-san to announce the start of the exam. The moment the alarm rings, he jumps towards the building, rearing his spectral wing arm back. As he gets close to the building, his sharp gaze flits around, identifying which walls were thicker and worn out. As he lands, he sweeps his wings through the walls, causing the building to tilt over, in the beginning of a fall. Bracing himself, he spreads his wings as far as he can, enlarging the palms at the end of them. Even with the boost in strength that his transformed form gives him, he knows full well that he can't lift that building. But he's thought this through. Trying to find more rocks, build a barricade would have taken too long, and leaving it as is would be as good as admitting defeat. By merely holding the building up, the only injuries he gains thanks to his durability is torn muscles, and his healing factor is fast enough that he can heal through torn muscles faster than he can get them. There's also the fact that seeing someone casually lift a building and bring it back to base to use as a barricade would dissuade people from attacking him, at least for a while. It also serves a secondary function of playing into Kodaira-san and the HPSC's expectations of him as the apprentice to All Might, symbol of peace. And there's no ignoring that rapidly damaging and healing his muscles multiple times a second will help him build strength and use more of One for All, though he's never going to admit that to anyone. Finally returning to his base, he deposits the building on the right side of the warehouse. That done, he collapses to the ground on his back, panting in exhaustion. Just as he was getting some rest, he heard footsteps on gravel in the distance, getting louder and louder by the second. Groaning in annoyance, he gets up, coming face to face with a team of 4. A tall, dark-haired guy with his teeth bared and palms stretched, a girl with spiky blonde hair and sharp features holding a rock between her hands, a girl with a bow in her hand and quivers on her back and hip, and a guy that's covered in rocks like he's wearing armor. So a fire quirk user with a temper, an electric quirk user with a penchant for using her quirk like a railgun, projectile trajectory manipulation quirk user, and an earth quirk user who prefers to get up close and personal. Stretching out the kinks in his muscles, he stretches and embodies his projection quirk, materializing his wings. Why don't you just give up and let us destroy the objective and we don't have to fight? You don't seem to have a team after all, Bow Girl says. Izuku chuckles before turning to them with bared teeth. Thanks for the advice, but may I give some of my own? Worry about yourself first. Izuku lunges forward. His left wing arm catches Rocky's face. He lifts him up and throws him onto Railgun before she can fire. Pyro's fireballs sizzle past him, ignored. He swings his fist into Bow Girl's solar plexus, knocking her out. The heat of Pyro's fireballs singes his wings, but he walks toward a now recovering Rocky and swings his leg at the nape of his neck. Railgun is already down, knocked out by Rocky's impact. Finally turning his attention towards a now panicking Pyro, he stretches his wing through one of the fireballs, grabs his head, and slams him into the ground. Looking at his downed opponents, he sighs in disappointment. And to think he hoped they'd give a tough enough fight that he'd need to bring out the support weapon Melissa made him. He softly touches the hot red ring on his finger and sighs. Maybe another time. One of these days, Izuku is going to figure out how to go back in time for the sole reason of smacking himself before he says something stupid and jinxes himself. Disappointed at a lack of a fight, he said. Too easy of a test, he said. Lifting the building will scare off the others, he said. And now, he was facing what seems to be every other participant of the exam, because apparently doing things like lifting an entire building will scare people enough that they form a temporary alliance to take you down. He cuts his mental ranting when he feels someone with a strength quirk deck him in the stomach with enough force to send him flying back. Growling, he stretches his arm to the side and presses the button on his ring, which melts down and away, forming a hot red baseball bat with the words common sense engraved on the side. Jumping above the warehouse and smacking something with a flight quirk away from his base, he pants. He's not going to get eliminated here. He is Hestia, the future symbol of hope, the successor to the symbol of peace. Like hell will he let this be the place he falls. Yoichi, I need some help. You up for it? A spectral blue copy of his transformed state takes shape next to him, common sense included. Oh, I am always up for smacking some fool in the face with a baseball bat. With a wild, gleeful laugh, Hestia re-enters the battle. All of these people want to team up and stand against him. Let them try. They don't know who he is after all. He'll teach them. He'll make it clear to everyone that to fight against Hestia is futile, because no matter how many times you knock him down, he'll get back up until it's them on the floor. Izuku sits on the bench, staring at the piece of plastic in his Han. Chapter 10. The Hopeful Hero Hestia. For all of his faults, Shoyuta is observant. So when he realizes he messed up in Nedzu's office, he immediately started looking into both the situation at hand, as well as every previous case of expulsion on his record, and to say that he's displeased with the results would be an understatement. Looking at the data in front of him, detached from the situation as he is, he can see a concerning pattern. Yes, he expelled bullies because the amount of political and legal power a hero has in the hands of a bully is a disaster. But he's also expelled the smiley kids who wear their heart on their sleeve and want nothing more than to help. He's expelled kids for no other reason than they reminded him of Oboro, and that is concerning because he didn't even notice. Dropping the files onto the table, he lets his head fall into his hands. Gods, what was he thinking, becoming a teacher? He knew he was bad with kids and people in general. He knew he was emotionally compromised when it came to UA students. Why did he cave in and agree to teach when Namuri badgered him? He slumps further in his seat with a groan. He's gonna get fired because of this. There's nothing he can do. Hopefully, being forthcoming with this information will afford him some leniency, because he knows that the dragon of Mizudafu won't show him mercy. She never does in court, and she especially won't for him because he screwed over her son. His one saving grace is that it's extremely unlikely that he'll lose his hero license. Even with a second job, he is by far one of the most effective underground heroes currently active, and nothing short of Dreadnought coming out of retirement will topple him from that spot. Something which he now knows to be impossible, given Yagi's health. Maybe when Midoriya gets back into the hero course, Shoyuta can send in an intern request. He knows that he's failed to prepare his students for the harsh realities of the heroics industry, realizes he became one of those obstacles to be overcome, but maybe he can train someone, teach someone so that he can finally do something right. Shoyuta nods to himself. Yes, that sounds good. Midoriya, from what he noticed from the kid's files, was rather pragmatic individual. He hopes the kid can put aside his rightful anger long enough for Shoyuta to start making up for his mistakes. Hey guys! Midoriya shouts, tugging at the bottom of his hoodie. Sorry I'm late. I was doing some work my mentor assigned, and lost track of time. Sue tilts her head. He really wonders where that tic came from. Is it a behavioral tic from her frog quirk, as people with animal quirks have a tendency to inherit the animal's instincts as well? Or is it a learned habit, something she picked up on from friends and family? You've mentioned them before, but you never say who they are, Karo. Trying to hide his instinctual panic with a chuckle, Izuku rubs his head. Ah, he's a retired underground hero called Dreadnought. He's been teaching me since my last year in middle school. Hestia leaps over the roof, trying desperately to keep up with All Might. Sensei said something about getting used to navigating through the sky and just took off, leaving Hestia scrambling after him. Tucking his knees in as he lands, he goes into a roll and uses the momentum to jump back onto his feet. Skidding to stop next to All Might, who's looking into the distance with a hand on his comms, Hestia bends over a bit, out of breath. We didn't stop to rest, Hestia. There's a villain attack a few streets down. A group with the leader having a destructive quirk. Leave them to me. You focus on ensuring civilians don't get caught in the crossfire. Without waiting for an answer, All Might jumps towards where the villain attack was. Hestia snaps one of his wings forward, grabbing onto All Might's leg. He's not quite as fast as All Might yet, so he's going to need a lift. As they get near the site of the attack, Hestia lets go and glides down with his wings. It honestly sucks that he has wings, but can't fly, though he guesses that he should be glad that he can glide at least. Shaking off his thoughts as he lands, he looks around to take in the situation. 7 villains currently occupied combating the first response heroes. The one making cyclones seems the most dangerous, especially when working in tandem with his fire-using teammate, but that situation is effectively neutralized the moment All Might landed right in between them, shaking the ground from the impact. Honestly, what is it with elemental quirk users becoming high-ranking, feared villains? Between Tempest, Inferno, Blaze, Electra, and Glacier, Japan has 5 S-rank villains, while the only elemental hero on their level is Endeavor. Hell, Eclipse's gravity control, while not strictly what someone would consider elemental manipulation, still fits. Hestia sees Backdraft on the other side of the street trying to put out a burning building while Kamui Woods rushes through, getting people out of it. He looks at the closer buildings, checking if any of them were structurally compromised. It's times like these he thinks that one can appreciate their friends, because he honestly wouldn't have known what to look for if it weren't for all the time spent listening to Uraraka-san rant about idiots destroying buildings out of carelessness, and much of taxpayer money is spent simply rebuilding the same building over and over. Spotting none that matched what he knows, he starts corralling the civilians away from the fight, an action he would soon regret. He stops what he was doing to swiftly turn around and bring up his wings to use as a shield, protecting the civilians behind him from an errant tornado creating in the fight between All Might and Cyclone Guy. Unfortunately, he didn't have enough wings to shield himself as well. Double unfortunately, the unblocked part of the tornado continued on its path, hitting the building behind him and the civilians, causing it to groan and tilt. The terrified screams from the civilians ring in his ear. Shit. He held up a building in the exam. Yeah, but that was a fake building. It was significantly lighter than a building of that size should have been. As he can at best lift an actual house, not fucking skyscraper. His wings, his embodiment of projection, isn't going to cut. His normal projection won't be enough for this either. Powering down his wings, he pushes everything he has into projection. The top half of a giant, spectral being of his likeness, the size of a truck, comes into existence above him, mimicking Hestia's raised arms. As it catches the building, Hestia feels himself buckle to his knees before slowly pushing himself back to his feet. He lets out a groan. If this whole situation was planned out by All Might to teach him not to get a big head over lifting a building during the exam, it's working. He did not think needed to know the difference between a 3-floor fake building and a 25-floor high-rise apartment complex, but now he does. He angles his head behind him a little, trying to see if everyone evacuated, and has to bite down a scream. What the hell are those people doing? Why the hell are they standing under a collapsing building, taking videos and photos of the guy, trying to make sure they don't end up as fucking pancakes? He's starting to think he's understanding why Katsuki always called others extras and morons, and he's not even sure if that's a bad thing anymore. He buckles to his knees again as the building crumbles more. Damn it, he's not really in any position to scream at them to get the fuck away. Wonderful. Of course that everything can go wrong goes wrong. Why did he expect anything else at this point? As if to spite him for those words, he hears the sizzling of a roaring blaze approach him, hitting him head on. He sputters indignantly at that. Sure, he's not hurt. His boosted defense and passive fire resistance genes inherited from his dad ensured that, but it's the principle of things. He is in the middle of holding the building up. Does this asshat really need to pick a fight with him, specifically? For a moment, a long dead and buried dream rears its head, bringing with it a bittersweet nostalgia. A dream where he had a partner, someone to take out the bad guys while he protects the people. A dream where he's back to back with his best friend, and feels a rage the likes of which he hasn't experienced in a long time. How dare this asshat try to kill innocent people? How dare he attack him when his attention was elsewhere? How dare he try stop Hestia from acting as a hero when he's finally able to? How dare he remind him of a dream that can never be fulfilled? How dare he? How dare he? Hestia sees black. With a growing rage, he points an open hand at the villain and clenches his fist. Toshinori hates having to fight people with powerful elemental quirks. Most of his effort needs to be on containing collateral damage, rather than defeating the villain. Taking advantage of a lull in the fight, Toshinori glances towards where young Izuku to see how he's doing. This is the first time he's an active participant in a villain fight, and Toshinori's not sure how much longer he can hold that building up and does a double take. Young Izuku is kneeling on the ground, with one hand above him and one in front and at a villain that slipped past him. His fingers sharpened and grew further, as have his teeth. He can see his eyes have slitted, and can hear the dull growl rumble through his chest as he squeezes the hand in front of him into a fist. Black chains, as if made of the very shadows itself, coalesce around the villain, binding him in place. Symbols and letters that he can't make out from here appear on the chains, looking as to be written out of light, looking as if the stars themselves have lent their aid in binding the villain. Similar chains start covering the falling building at around the same time, keeping it too bound in place. He sees his apprentice get up then, and stalked towards where the rest of the villains were, a wide, sharp grin on his face. For the first time in a long time, All Might feels a genuine smile slide onto his face at the sight of his apprentice dismiss his limitations to ensure the safety of the people. Feels pride at seeing his successor display to the world what it means to be a hero. With a loud, boisterous laugh, All Might turns towards the scoundrel he was facing till now. Heed this, villain. It matters not how many of you aim to sow chaos in our streets, for there will always be a hero ready to lay down their lives to stop you. Now how about we finish this, so that this old man can show the youngsters how it's done. As Hestia and All Might is done ensuring that the last of the civilians are safe, he hears the reporters call out to his mentor. All Might! All Might! He sees his mentor smile at the reporters and walk towards them. Shrugging to himself, Hestia follows. He knew dealing with reporters and being in the public I was part of the package when he chose to become a limelight hero, so no use being annoyed. Might as well watch how All Might handles them and take notes. Aha! How might I help you, citizens? Hello, All Might. I am Takashima Tomiko from Hero Network News, and I was wondering if you could tell us about your companion. You seemed far more familiar with him than you are with other heroes, after all. Laughing, All Might puts his hands on his hips. Why, the young man that debuted today is my apprentice, the hero Hestia. The reporters, as well as any civilian within hearing range, go silent for a moment, before they all start shouting questions at both them. Now, I am sure we can answer your questions, but why don't you ask the hero in question? He holds back a sigh. He should have known that All Might's version of teaching him how to manage his public relations would be to throw him into a random roadside interview. He smiles regardless of his exasperation because he is a hero now, someone who people look up to as an example, and complaining about random things on live TV is a horrible example. As my mentor said, I am the hopeful hero, Hestia. The noise picks up again. Resigning himself to the fact that he's about to be interrogated by the crowd of reporters until All Might grows bored, he starts answer the questions as they come. Hestia, I'm Kido Reiko of Tokyo Hero Times. How do you feel about being All Might's apprentice? It is my pleasure and privilege to be learning from and under such an accomplished hero. It is obvious from his lessons that he's an experienced veteran of the industry. Do you have a hero license? Are planning on following in your mentor's footsteps and become a limelight hero? I received my provisional hero license a few days back. And yes, I do plan on being a limelight hero. As versatile as my quirk is, it's not subtle enough to work underground. Hopefully that should stop anyone from connecting the hero Hestia with some random undergrounder with a vaguely similar quirk. How do you feel about receiving your hero license? Out of all the questions, that one stands out to him. It is a question that he needs to legitimately think about. What's your name, sir? Matsuno Masa, of Japan Hero Broadcast. Well, Matsuno-san, it was a mixture of elated joy and disappointment that seemed to have stopped them all in their tracks. He suppresses the urge to grin. Just because he finds their confusion hilarious doesn't mean he should let them know. I was quirkless until a few months ago, you see. So as happy as I am that I'm a hero now, I'm also a little disappointed that I wasn't able to make it as the first quirkless hero. I am a 100% rooting for whoever the next insane lunatic to dream of that, though. A voice from the back pipes up then. Just because someone is quirkless doesn't mean they aren't entitled to dreams. Why do you hate a quarter of our population? Is it a result of some childhood trauma? Izuku stares in pure, unadulterated awe at the audacity of this bitch. Did you miss the part where I said I was quirkless so recently that I'm still a little disoriented at having a quirk? Honestly, though, lady, anyone who dares to have dreams and ambitions while being quirkless is insane. That sort of shit is what would get you bullied, beaten, and killed in our society. Honestly, the biggest obstacle and threat for a quirkless hero isn't the fighting criminals and villains thing, but rather having to live among bloodthirsty assholes who'd kill them for existing. On that note, PSA to everyone who is quirkless. Turning himself so he's facing as many of the cameras as possible, He starts his PSA to those that are like he was. Midoriya Izuku didn't have anyone to idolize and relate to growing up. All the information he knows, he's had to learn through experience. He doesn't want other quirkless kids to go through the same thing. So if by speaking up now, he can save them some pain, he'd gladly do so. Even if it might lose him some points with the general public and the HPSC for criticizing them. The changes in the laws since the advent of quirks is weird. The only crimes a quirkless person is legally capable of committing is loitering, tax evasion, and resisting arrest. Every other crime has some allusion to quirks in the legal definitions for some reason. This means that if anyone ever gives y'all shit for anything, just stab them. You legally cannot be charged with anything. I would know. The way I got rid of my bullies was by beating up a couple dozen of them with a wooden plank. They've been unable to charge me with anything. Though keep in mind that the laws protecting you are also extremely limited. Your saving grace, of course, being the Quirkless Protection Act, a piece of legislation introduced when quirks were still in the minority, and the government wanted to protect the quirkless citizens, which was most of them. Also, if you're a student, the head of the Department of Education will be your personal hero. She has a teenage quirkless son, and so takes all allegations regarding quirkless discrimination seriously. Please stay safe and remember to stab a bitch if they bully you. This is the end of today's life lesson with Hestia. Thank you for watching. Izuku buries his head into his arms, determined to never get up from here. He didn't think he'd ever think this, but what he wouldn't do for Katsuki to show up and cause a scene right now. He and his friends were just hanging out, talking, when the topic of heroes came up, which was fine. Good, even because it's a topic he knows. But then Kirishima decided to bring up the new manly debut of Hestia, and how manly it was for him to hold that building up. And it was all Izuku could do to not burn up with how embarrassed he was. And then, seeing his blush, Uraraka and Tsu decided to jump in and talk about Hestia more, even if they have no clue why he's embarrassed. Gods, he hopes they don't think he has a celebrity crush on himself. That would be so much worse than if they knew he was Hestia. Hearing a cacophony of cackling in his head only makes him more embarrassed. Shut the fuck up, you lot, he hisses at the vestiges. A cloaked figure crouches on building, looking at the buildings he and his people were in just now. Command. Installation of explosives at Site Gamma is affirmative. And with that, the entire street goes up in flames. Chapter 11. Your actions. All for one listened to the interview with a growing sense of unease, a wide grin spreading across his face that didn't quite reach his eyes as the new one for all holder, Hestia, made his debut. What began as a simple introduction quickly turned into a strategic masterclass, and while all for one couldn't help but chuckle, there was a tension in his voice that betrayed his concern. "Oh, this is marvelous," he murmured, leaning back in his chair, fingers steepled in front of him. "What a devious little hero you are." He replayed the scene in his mind, analyzing every move with a growing sense of apprehension. With his opening gambit, Hestia had done more than just introduce himself. He had put the Hero Public Safety Commission in the public's crosshairs, drawing attention to the flaws in the quirks-based legal system and criticizing society's treatment of the quirkless. It was a bold move, one that destabilized an organization critical to maintaining the Hero Society's status quo. He's thrown a wrench into their works, hasn't he? All for one chuckled again, but the sound was hollow, making them the target of public scrutiny. How clever. But it didn't stop there. Hestia had baited both anti-quirk and anti-quirkless groups, stoking the fires of their outrage. All for one could already foresee the chaos that would follow, the extremist groups taking the bait and revealing themselves. It was a brilliant strategy, yet it made his chest tighten with an unfamiliar sense of dread. He's drawing them out, making them expose themselves, All for one said, his admiration tinged with something darker, something more anxious. What a fine way to clear the board of some nuisances. And then there was Hestia's message to the quirkless. A mix of truth and strategic misinformation, it was crafted perfectly for a population conditioned to distrust and second-guess everything. The quirkless would feel empowered by his words, while the rest of the population would be forced to confront the harsh reality of their prejudices. It was a psychological blow that would leave lasting scars, one that All for One knew would echo far beyond the immediate future. Ah, the quirkless will latch onto this, won't they? All for One mused, though his voice was quieter now, the confidence wavering. And the rest? They'll start to fear the consequences of their actions. He's sowing doubt, fear, paranoia. Brilliant, yes, but the true stroke of genius, however, and the source of All for One's deepest unease, lay in how Hestia's words would cripple criminal operations across the country. All for One's own network, already strained, would face new challenges as people became more cautious, more fearful. The sudden surge of terrorist activity, baited into action by Hestia's remarks, would further complicate matters as they encroached on meticulously controlled territories. How troublesome, All for One said with a rueful smile that didn't quite hide the anxiety creeping into his mind. But oh, how exciting it is to have such a worthy opponent. Yet beneath the thrill of this new game, there was a shadow of fear, one that All for One couldn't shake. Hestia's cunning, his imposing presence, his versatile quirk. These were not just signs of a powerful hero. They were traits eerily reminiscent of the third user of One for All, the one with adaptive embodiment. The memory of that quirk, of how the third had pushed him to the brink, gnawed at All for One's confidence. And then there was the eighth who had managed to cripple him. With every generation, One for All grew stronger, and now, faced with this new holder, All for One felt that strength, that cunning, reaching its peak, and it terrified him. He stared at the screen, eyes narrowing as he assessed the terrifying child who had just made his debut. This new holder of One for All was different, stronger than all might, wielding the quirk of the third user, and fueled by the anger of the oppressed. It was clear that this boy was more than just a hero. He was a force of nature, one that could easily threaten everything All for One had built. As powerful as he was, All for One knew his limitations. His body, already damaged from his last encounter with All Might, was not in any condition to take on this new threat. If he wasn't sure he could defeat All Might in his current state, how could he hope to stand against this tiny abomination? No, this was not a battle he could afford to fight personally. Tamura was out of the question. He was meant to be All for One's new vessel, the successor to his legacy. Sacrificing him now would be reckless. What he needed was a new villain, someone capable of going toe-to-toe with this ninth user, yet disposable enough that their loss wouldn't be missed. They had to be smart, too, cunning enough to challenge the ninth and avoid capture. As the plan began to take shape in his mind, All for One allowed himself a small smile. This new opponent would require careful planning and precise execution, but he would create the perfect adversary for Hestia, someone strong enough to keep him occupied, yet ultimately expendable. "Let's see how you handle this, little hero," he whispered to himself, already envisioning the chaos that would unfold. Sipping his can of lemon soda, Izuku turns the corner, running into someone he very much didn't want to. He and Katsuki stared at each other, various emotions passing through them. It pisses Izuku to hell and back that even though it's been so long since they've been friends, Izuku can still read the emotions from Katsuki's expression alone. Regret, anger, disbelief. The silence, as usual, is broken by Katsuki. But unlike usual, he doesn't explode. Rather, he speaks in a calm and controlled manner. Enough so that Izuku can instantly tell that it's forced. "You're Hestia." Izuku sputters, trying to deny it, before realizing that Katsuki's already made up his mind on this, and won't be swayed. Leaning back on the wall, he groans with his face in his hands. Ugh, what gave it away? Tisach. Katsuki simply looks away, refusing to look Izuku in the eye. Just as Izuku thinks that the conversation's over, Katsuki speaks up. "Recognized your shitty-ass speech patterns. Also, the only person I've ever seen be that fucking ruthless was Auntie. Thought I was delirious from overworking or something. Only confirmed it myself when I saw you just now." Is he fucking serious? He recognized Izuku's speech patterns? Wait, What do you mean you confirmed it when you saw me? Snarling at him, Katsuki snaps out a reply. 'Cause you're not wearing any of his merch, shithead. If Hestia was anyone other than you would be decked out in the merch by now. Handmade if you had to, especially considering it's All Might's fucking apprentice. The explosions that had been bizarrely missing till now make an appearance as Katsuki grabs the front of Izuku's shirt and shoves him harder into the wall. Thought that just because you have a quirk now, that you're hot shit? You think you can beat me? That you can beat me? That you're better than me? Well, think again, you shitty nerd. Hobo-sensei might have stopped me from kicking your ass by expelling you, but next time we fight, you won't be walking away from it. Izuku snaps. Grabbing hold of Katsuki's hands and wrenching them away from him, he punches his ex-best friend in the face. You fucking asshole. I'm never good enough for you, am I? When I'm quirkless, I'm a useless Deku. Now that I have a quirk, I'm just some wannabe who thinks he's better than you? Contrary to your belief, Katsuki, you aren't the center of my universe. You may have been once, but not anymore. When I became a hero, it had nothing to do with one-upping you, and everything to do with the fact that I wanted to be someone that could save people with a smile. Staring at Katsuki, who's still on the ground due to shock, Izuku continues. You haven't really crossed my mind of late, Katsuki, considering I was a bit too busy living out my dream. In fact, the only time I ever thought of you was when I was reminded that our promise can never be fulfilled, because you broke it. I will never have a partner that I can trust and rely on to watch my back. We'll never have a partner that focuses on taking down the villain while I rescue civilians. I can never be a part of a duo with Dynamite because you took our promise and you ground it under your heel. Unless you have something important to say, leave me the fuck alone. Scoffing, Izuku turns around and starts walking, eager to put distance, both between himself and Katsuki, as well as himself and the situation. His plans of locking this whole interaction deep in his mind are shut down when he hears an explosion behind him, causing him to duck. Twirling around in a combat stance, black whip arching off his hands and shoulders, Izuku stares down Katsuki. You fucking piece of shit. What do you mean I broke our promise? You were the one who broke it, asshat. What, by being quirkless? Izuku snaps out sarcastically, though he still keeps Black Whip out. Best to be safe when dealing with Katsuki. No, by being weak. You were fucking weak, and you didn't do anything about it. You let our dream die. I didn't have anything to fucking do with it. Izuku takes a deep breath, trying to calm down both himself and Black Whip. When would I have done that, genius? When I was being beat up. When I was being held down and had words carved into my flesh. Or maybe when I was being told that I was better off dead than alive. If you thought that the shit you put me through was some sort of fucked up training, then newsflash, you were only my worst bully because emotional pain of being hurt by someone I never thought would hurt me. Scoffing, Izuku runs a hand through his hair, trying and failing to stop the tears from flowing. You were a hero, you know? You were my hero. You always fought off and chased away my bullies, even if they were twice our age. Always made sure that I was all right and not hurt or sad. But you slowly started pulling away and hanging out with the bullies. Until one day you just stopped. Stopped being my friend, stopped protecting me, stopped being my hero. You became my bully instead. Why did you put up with my shit for so long then? Katsuki asks, voice quiet. Sniffing and wiping away some of his tears, Izuku replies, voice just as quiet. A few years back, our underclassman, Hakama-san, got into an accident, and while she got off fine thanks to her quirk, her mom was hospitalized. To cheer her up, you anonymously left cake and flowers in her locker. And in our last year of primary school, you woke up early to leave me boxes of my favorite food outside my door, because you knew that my mom was too busy to make stuff that year. Or even more recently, the day after you told me to take a swan dive, you threatened the teachers and students into leaving me alone, and ensured that the roof door was locked. Hell, all throughout primary and middle school, you always got off at my stop on the metro, even though your home is closer to the stop before, because you knew I was scared of riding the train on my own when we were kids. Izuku lets out a breath and leans back, I guess I could always see traces of my best friend somewhere in there, regardless of how much of a bullying asshole you were. They just stare at each other for a few minutes, before Katsuki breaks the silence once more. Auntie is going after UA, and everyone in it for everything they have, isn't she? Dumbfounded at both the deduction and the change in topic, Izuku just nods. TCH, she doesn't fucking need it, but tell her good luck. With that, Katsuki tucks his hands in his pockets and starts walking away. A couple of days after Hestia's first patrol, Toshinori sat across from young Izuku in the Midoriya household's living room, setting up his laptop and a few papers. Clearing his throat, he began the debrief. All right, young man. You've had your first patrol as well as a few days to reflect. Let's hear your thoughts on how it went. Is this like a self-reflection exercise to identify and eliminate my weaknesses and mistakes? Toshinori nodded with a proud smile. Exactly. So, tell me, what did you do right? What went wrong? What could you have done before or during patrol to improve? He watched with fond exasperation as his successor brought a hand to his mouth, mumbling for a few moments, before looking up with a smile that warmed Toshinori's heart, much like Nana's smile once did. Well, it was difficult keeping up with you, so I either need to get faster or find an alternative. What I did before that large fight towards the end might be feasible, but holding onto your leg every time we move, especially during non-emergencies, would be risky. The injuries I could get falling from that height would leave me too injured to perform adequately for the rest of the patrol. Seeing his protégé overlook something, Toshinori interjected. Not to mention the public image you'd gain by literally hanging off me. Young Izuku hummed non-committally, staring at his routinely flexing palms. Yeah, that too, I suppose. Then there was my performance during the fight. Nominara Kaito's winds took me off guard with how strong they were, which was a mistake. Someone with an elemental quirk strong enough to keep you from blitzing them wasn't someone I should have underestimated. And when that fire villain attacked me, I was unable to do anything. If it weren't for me finally manifesting and embodying Black Whip, a lot of civilians would have died. Looking Toshinori in the eye, young Izuku finished his analysis. I severely lack any form of ranged options. My mobility, strength, and ranged abilities were things I thought I could wait on, assuming more access to One for All would fix them. But I'm a hero now, not later. I need to address these issues immediately. With a guffaw, Toshinori ruffled his protégé's hair. Keep that up, and soon I'll be out of a job as your mentor. He stifled a sigh at the young man's spluttering apologies but couldn't hold back a smile. He really did pick well with this one, didn't he? Now, there's one last thing we need to discuss. Your interaction with the press. Young Izuku snapped to attention, the aborted yawn turning into a cough. Toshinori waited a few moments for him to regain his composure. You handled yourself well under the circumstances. You stayed composed, answered questions directly, and took the opportunity to send a message to those who needed it. That's the kind of initiative I expected from you. Young Izuku nodded, though his expression remained a mix of apprehension and determination. But, was it too much? I know I went overboard, but once I started, I couldn't stop. I don't want to create any issues with my comments about quirkless people. Toshinori's smile was warm. You spoke from the heart, and that's important. As a hero, you're not just a symbol of strength, but of hope and truth. What you said was bold but necessary. People need to hear those truths, especially from someone who understands their struggles firsthand. Young Izuku relaxed slightly, but his brow furrowed as he considered the implications. But what about the backlash? The HPSC might not be happy with what I said. Toshinori waved a hand dismissively. Let me handle the HPSC. As for the public, opinions will always differ. Some will criticize, some will praise, but what matters is that you stay true to yourself and your ideals. You've already shown you're willing to fight for what's right, even if it ruffles a few feathers. Young Izuku exhaled slowly, the tension in his shoulders easing. I guess I just didn't want to mess up so soon after starting. Tashinori placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. You're not messing up. You're learning, growing, and making a difference. That's all anyone can ask of you. He watched as young Izuku finally allowed himself to smile, the anxiety from earlier melting away. Thank you, Yagi-sensei. I'll keep doing my best. Tashinori grinned, giving young Izuku's shoulder a supportive squeeze. I know you will. And remember, I'm always here if you need guidance. You're not in this alone. Tashinori paused, carefully considering how best to approach the deeper implications of the interview. He knew the young hero's words had already sent ripples through society, and it was important young Izuku understood the full scope of what he had done. You did more than just speak your mind, Tashinori said, his tone serious but proud. You put the Hero Public Safety Commission in the public eye. By highlighting the flaws in the system and the treatment of the quirkless, you've forced the HPSC to address these issues. They can't ignore you now, and neither can the public. Young Izuku's face was just as serious. That's what I was hoping for. The treatment of the quirkless is never spoken about, just accepted as a fact of life. I thought making people realize what they've been dismissive of might push for better rights and protections for the quirkless. Tashinori nodded. Not only that, but you also baited both anti-quirk and anti-quirkless groups to come out in outrage. They'll be vocal, they'll try to confront you, and in doing so, they'll reveal themselves. Young Izuku blinked in surprise. I didn't even think about that. I just wanted them to know they can't keep intimidating people. Tashinori smiled warmly. And that's exactly what makes you so effective. You spoke with conviction and sincerity. And now, the terrorists and extremists will react, which will make them easier to find and neutralize. He took a deep breath, knowing the next point was crucial. But understand, young Izuku, that by speaking up, you've also drawn attention to yourself. The enemies you make today will try to take you down tomorrow. You've entered a different level of heroism now, one where words can be just as powerful as your fists. Young Izuku nodded, his resolve clear. I know, and I'm ready. I won't let them scare me into silence. Tashinori's pride swelled. That's the spirit, and I'll be here every step of the way. Now, let's talk strategy. Moving forward, we'll need to be more mindful of how we handle the press. You've already made a strong impression, but we need to ensure that every statement you make continues to support your goals and the kind of hero you want to be. Young Izuku listened intently as Tashinori began outlining key points, tips, and strategies for managing public appearances and media relations. This was the start of a new chapter in his hero journey, one where every word he spoke could shape the future of hero society. The workshop was a bustling hub of activity, with the constant hum of machinery and the clink of metal against metal filling the air. Izuku stood just inside the door, his expression a mix of gratitude and curiosity as he watched Melissa's shield focused on her latest project. Despite the array of tools and gadgets around him, his mind was occupied with both his recent realizations about his weaknesses and his appreciation for Melissa's recent move. Melissa, do you have a moment? He asked, stepping further into the room. Melissa looked up from her work, a warm smile spreading across her face. Izuku, of course, what's up? He hesitated for a moment, then began with a different topic. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of hero work, I just wanted to ask, how are you liking Japan so far? And thank you for moving here. It means a lot to me. Melissa's smile widened, touched by his thoughtfulness. Japan has been amazing so far. The culture, the food, everything's so vibrant and different from Island. And don't even mention it, Izuku. Moving here was an easy decision. I'm your support technician, and I need to be available to improve and fix your gear, especially now when you're just starting out and will need to have adjustments and improvements made to your gear. Izuku's expression softened, deeply moved by her words. I'm really grateful, Melissa. Having you here makes a huge difference. I couldn't ask for a better support tech. Melissa waved off his praise, though her eyes sparkling tell a different story. I'm just doing my job, but hearing that makes it all worth it. Now, what's on your mind? Izuku's expression grew serious again as he gathered his thoughts. I've been thinking a lot about my abilities, more specifically, the areas where I'm lacking. I need your help. She straightened up, giving him her full attention. What areas are you talking about? Izuku sighed, frustrated at his shortcomings and his inability to recognize them before now. I'm still unable to use the enhancement part of One for All, so I can't rely on it for strength. I've been compensating with the bat you made for me, but that alone isn't enough. I don't have any ranged options, and my mobility is severely lacking. I need support gear to make up for these weaknesses. But since I change form when I transform, it can't just be traditional jet boots or something. Melissa's eyes widen slightly before she shifts to what he recognizes as her problem-solving mode. That does complicate things, but it's not impossible. We'll need to design the gear in a way that they can integrate with adaptive embodiments transformation. Something that can either be put on in your transformed state, like Common Sense's ring, or built into your form itself. Izuku nods, glad that she got it. Exactly, and I just for the life of me couldn't figure out anything that fit those parameters. Tapping her chin, Melissa considered the challenge ahead of her. For anyone else, standard support gear can just be added to their costume, but you don't have a costume. And just making all your support gear out of my nanotech is unfeasible, given the time it takes to make those. She goes after that, her eyes darting side to side. Eventually, after a few minutes, she looks at Izuku. You said that One for All is a power stockpile, correct? Confused at the question, but trusting her to be going somewhere with this, Izuku nods. Yeah, One for All is a power stockpile. It normally lets its users siphon off that power to enhance their own physical abilities. Can the power stockpile be used any other way? Izuku considers the question. I'm not sure, and it's not like it matters much anyway. I can't use the power stockpile yet, remember? Melissa shakes her head. You can't use the power stockpile, but that doesn't mean it doesn't still exist in your quirk. Do you know if you can somehow siphon that power not into yourself, but into support gear? I don't know, but I'll ask the vestiges if it's possible. Though if it ends up that Izuku can use the strength enhancement to power up a bloody baseball bat, but not himself, he's going to be annoyed. Chapter 12. Have consequences. Before Yagi-sensei left, he turned around with a serious look on his face. Young Izuku, while I am proud of what you have said and done, it was risky. Izuku defiantly stares down his mentor. He knows what he did was risky, but it was something he thought through, was something he felt needed to be done. And he says as much to his teacher. I thought it through, sensei, and I wasn't entirely truthful with what I said. While assaulting someone without a quirk is on the same level as causing a public disturbance, and perpetrators are let off with just a fine, the moment it crosses into murder, quirk usage and quirk status are legally irrelevant. That's if the cops, heroes, or jury can seriously consider a quirkless person capable enough to do so, of course. But as long as people are just following my advice of beating up people picking on them, they shouldn't run into any legal issues. I know that you weren't entirely truthful and twisted the truth, but next time, try not to encourage a part of the population to go full purge, all right? If you find any such legal loopholes in the law exempting a portion of the population from the law, then you go to the Department of Justice and inform the Solicitor General. Izuku sheepishly rubs his head. Yeah, he can see what might have been the perceived issue with what he said, and next time, he'll be more careful about pointing out such loopholes in the future. Especially if it's actually true and not a partial lie like now. The usually imposing room felt unusually small, its walls seeming to close in on the assembled leaders of the Hero Public Safety Commission. The atmosphere was heavy, oppressive, as if the air itself had thickened with the weight of what they had just witnessed. Hestia's words echoed in their minds, each phrase a needle prick to their carefully cultivated control. The president sat at the head of the table, her hands gripping the armrests of her chair more tightly than she realized. Her usual calm demeanor was fraying at the edges, betraying the unease she felt. Around the table, the other members exchanged glances, their usual confidence shaken. This, This cannot stand. One of the senior members finally said, his voice uncharacteristically shaky. He's dangerous. He didn't just criticize the laws, he criticized us, the commission. He's made us a target. Another member, usually composed, ran a hand through his hair, his fingers trembling slightly. He's connected to All Might. We can't just get rid of him. The fallout, it could be catastrophic. And yet, another voice interjected, filled with a barely concealed panic. Can we afford not to? He's put us under the microscope. If he continues, the public could start questioning everything we've done, everything we stand for. We could lose control. The president's gaze swept across the room, noting the fear in their eyes. This wasn't how things were supposed to be. For decades, they had operated with impunity, their authority unquestioned. Now, a single hero, a boy really, had shaken that foundation with a few carefully chosen words. We have hawks, one of the members said, almost desperately, as if clinging to a lifeline. He could handle it, quietly, before this spirals any further. A tense silence followed, each person in the room weighing the implications. Hawks was their most valuable asset, a tool they had shaped and sharpened for moments just like this. But using him meant risking everything. Losing Hawks, losing their grip on the situation, losing the delicate balance they had maintained for so long. The president's voice, when it came, was more strained than she intended. We can't afford to act hastily. Hestia is connected to All Might. If we move against him now, we risk exposing ourselves. But her voice faltered for a moment, betraying her inner turmoil. But if he does this again, if he continues to challenge us, we may have no choice. The room seemed to shrink further, the walls pressing in as the gravity of the situation settled over them. The once unshakable commission was now facing a threat they hadn't anticipated, and the fear of what might come next was palpable. We'll watch him, the president continued, though the words felt hollow even as she spoke them. For now, we wait. But if he steps out of line again, if he targets us again, we'll do what we must, even if it means losing Hawks. The decision was made, but the uncertainty lingered, a dark cloud that wouldn't dissipate. The members of the HPSC left the room one by one, their usual confidence replaced by a gnawing anxiety. For the first time in decades, they felt exposed, vulnerable, and it terrified them. The president remained seated long after the others had gone, staring at the door with a mixture of dread and determination. Hestia had forced their hand, and now they were on the brink, teetering between maintaining control and watching it slip away. Izuku, Kaminari, and Tsuyu were walking down a bustling street, the afternoon sun casting long shadows as the day began to wind down. The air was filled with the scent of street food, and the sounds of chatter and laughter echoed around them. Man, I'm glad we finally got to do this, Kaminari said, stretching his arms above his head. Feels like everyone's been so busy lately. Ribbit, it's nice to just relax for a bit, Tsuyu added, her hands tucked into the pockets of her jacket. I'm glad we could all make it today. Izuku smiled, nodding in agreement. Yeah, it's great to just hang out and not worry about anything for a while. I've been looking forward to this. The trio wandered through the various stalls, stopping occasionally to check out something that caught their eye. Kaminari excitedly pointed out a stand selling flashy, novelty electronics, and Tsuyu paused to admire a collection of cute frog-themed trinkets, her eyes lighting up at the sight. Hey, look at these, Kaminari called out, picking up a small gadget. This thing supposedly lets you charge your phone in just a few minutes. I wonder if it actually works. Izuku chuckled. You might be the best person to test that out, Kaminari. Kaminari grinned, playfully pretending to zap the device with a tiny spark from his fingers. Guess I've got to put these quirks to good use somehow. Tsuyu tilted her head, watching him with a small smile. Just don't fry the circuits, Kaminari. As they continued down the street, they came across a small arcade. Kaminari's eyes lit up with excitement. Oh, we have to go in. I bet I can beat you both at any game here. Tsuyu gave him a skeptical look. "You're on, Ribbit." Izuku laughed as they entered the arcade, the familiar sounds of beeping machines and the clatter of buttons greeting them. They quickly found themselves at a racing game, and Kaminari wasted no time challenging them both. As the game started, Kaminari took an early lead, laughing triumphantly. But Tsuyu quickly caught up, her driving precise and smooth. Izuku, on the other hand, struggled a bit with the controls, but his determination kept him in the race. "Come on, Izuku. You can do it," Kaminari cheered, glancing over with a grin. Tsuyu remained focused, her eyes on the screen. "Just don't crash, Ribbit." In the end, Tsuyu crossed the finish line first, followed closely by Kaminari. Izuku trailed behind but was still smiling, clearly enjoying himself. "I guess I need more practice," Izuku said, scratching the back of his head with a sheepish grin. Tsuyu patted him on the shoulder. "You did well, Ribbit. Just need to work on your timing." Kaminari laughed, still buzzing with energy. "That was awesome. We should totally do this more often." As they left the arcade, the sky was beginning to darken, the streetlights flickering on. The trio continued to walk, chatting and laughing, the camaraderie between them clear. Despite their busy lives, moments like these reminded them that they could always count on each other for a good time. Redestro, the imposing leader of the MLA, stood at the center, his fists clenched so tightly that the veins in his arms bulged. His usual calm, calculating demeanor was gone, replaced by a burning rage that seemed to radiate off him in waves. The image of Hestia, a mere boy with the gall to speak against everything they believed in, flickered on the large screen behind him, fueling the fire within. "This insolence, this sheer arrogance," Redestro roared, slamming his fist onto the table, the sound reverberating through the room like a gunshot. "Who does this brat think he is? To speak of equality, to even suggest that a quirkless nobody could stand on equal footing with us, those chosen by power, is an affront to everything we stand for." The other members of the MLA, high-ranking officials with equally strong quirks and stronger egos, shouted in agreement, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of anger. Skeptic, usually the most composed, was pacing back and forth, his face flushed with rage. "He dares to undermine our very principles." Skeptic spat, his voice dripping with venom. "Might makes right, that is the natural order, and yet this child has the audacity to suggest otherwise? To encourage the weak to stand up to the strong? It's beyond infuriating. It's a declaration of war," Trumpet interjected, his voice cold and cutting through the chaos. "Hestia is not just a nuisance, he's a threat. He's challenging the foundation of our beliefs. And if we allow this to continue, he'll inspire others. The weak will grow bold, thinking they can defy those who are superior. We cannot allow this." Redestro's eyes narrowed, his fury sharpening into a dangerous focus. "No, we cannot. This child, this so-called hero Hestia, has made a grave mistake. He thinks that because he's tied to All Might, he's untouchable. That he can speak freely and undermine the natural order we've fought so hard to restore." He turned to the others, his voice low and menacing, but laced with a terrifying resolve. "He will learn the cost of defying us. We will make an example of him, show the world what happens when anyone, dares to challenge the strong. He'll regret ever thinking that power could belong to the weak." Skeptic, still fuming, nodded sharply. "We need to crush this rebellion before it starts. Show the world that might is not just right but absolute. Hestia's words have sparked a fire, but we will snuff it out before it can spread." Before Redestro could respond, one of the younger members, curious, who often saw potential in chaos, leaned forward, her eyes glinting with a different kind of intensity. "But perhaps we could turn this to our advantage," she suggested, her voice cutting through the fury like a blade. "Hestia's words have stirred up unrest. The weaker members of society will be emboldened, confused, looking for direction. If we play our cards right, we could use this chaos to further our cause, draw in new followers, destabilize the current order even more. The chamber fell silent for a moment as the idea hung in the air. The anger was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but now it was laced with a new thread of possibility. Redestro's gaze sharpened as he considered her words. The fury in his eyes was still there, but now it was tempered with a cold, calculating glint. You're suggesting we let this chaos unfold, and then swoop in to mold it to our advantage? Curious nodded, a faint smile playing on her lips. Precisely. We crush Hestia, yes, but in the process we seize the opportunity to grow stronger. Let the fools rally behind him, and when we bring him down, we'll be there to show them the true path. Redestro's anger didn't fade, but it morphed into something more dangerous, determination, laced with cunning. Very well. We'll use this chaos, but make no mistake, Hestia will pay for his defiance. And when he falls, the world will know the true power of the strong. The chamber, once filled with pure rage, was now humming with a new energy, a blend of anger and anticipation. Plans began to form, strategies to dismantle Hestia's influence while exploiting the chaos he had unleashed. Redestro, his fury now a cold, calculated fury, stared at the screen one last time. Hestia has challenged us, and he will pay the price, he vowed. But we will make sure to turn his defiance into our strength. By the time we're through with him, the world will remember why the strong rule, and the weak obey. Izuku wakes up to see the black void he's come to associate with One for All. Getting up, he makes his way to the throne room area where the vestiges usually stay. The moment he spots them, he waves for Yoichi. Hey Yoichi, I have a question. The power stockpile in One for All? Can it only be used to power a body enhancement, or can it be used as a power source for support gear? Yoichi tilts his in what seems to be consideration for a moment, before shrugging. No clue. Izuku slumps in disappointment. If Yoichi doesn't know, then there's little to no chance of the other vestiges knowing. Before he can delve too deep into whether or not this idea was a lost cause, Yoichi speaks up again. I do know someone that will know. Follow me. Confused, Izuku starts following him. Yoichi leads him to the past the light of the throne room and the edge of the void. Cupping his hands over his mouth, Yoichi shouts, Hey, wake up! Little Ninth needs to speak with you. Nothing happens, and Izuku thinks that maybe Yoichi is just fucking with him. Then he feels a chill run down his spine, a primal, instinctive feeling rushing through him. He hears the scraping of nails, of claws on wood, on metal, on stone. Then he sees it, a blinding, white light, a void of white, as if someone took the shadowy black void of their surroundings and perfectly inverted it. Below the blinding anti-void, he sees 9 pairs of glowing eyes, with 8 of circling the largest one in the middle. The largest, glowing green eye, floating just above a mouth full of sharp teeth, the same blinding anti-void as before. The sight has him frozen in place, his instincts screaming, Predator! It takes him a moment to realize exactly what it is he's seeing, and even after he does, he can't force down the feeling of danger. But instead of being afraid of what he sees in front of him, he's now grinning like a madman, a feral, twisted smile that matches what he sees in front of him. Izuku, Yoichi speaks up, meet One for All. Looking between the two, Izuku stammers in shock and confusion. I thought the black void around us and the space we're in is One for All? Crossing his arms and leaning back on one foot, Yoichi makes a vague noise. It is. But One for All decided that they wanted a physical body as well at some point, so they made one for themselves. Izuku decides to just shrug it off. Quirks in general are bullshit, and it's commonly understood that trying to question them is an exercise in futility. And One for All is literally the oldest quirk in existence and also sentient. Trying to question how or why it works the way it works seems like a good way to drive himself insane. Cool, so, One for All? About the power stockpile. As Hestia's words echoed through the room, A hushed silence fell over the group. The message, though unexpected, resonated deeply with them. Here was a hero, someone with a quirk, yet speaking out in a way that aligned, however unintentionally, with their pro-quirkless ideology. It was an odd alignment of interests that stirred a mix of emotions within the room. Fleck Turn's eyes narrowed as he studied the boy on the screen. "Interesting," he murmured, his voice a quiet rumble that drew the attention of everyone present. "This Hestia, he speaks with a passion that could serve our cause well." One of the senior members, a man with a harsh demeanor and a visible quirk, scars on his hands from a power he resented, leaned forward, his expression conflicted. "But he's one of them, a hero. How can we trust him? He might be saying what we want to hear, but his allegiance lies with the quirked." Fleck Turn's gaze flicked to the man, a small, knowing smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "True, he is a hero, and yes, he possesses a quirk. But listen to his words. He speaks of the suffering of the quirkless, of the oppression they face. He's putting the Hero Public Safety Commission on notice, questioning the very foundation of their system. Whether he realizes it or not, he's striking a blow against the very society that props up quirk supremacy." A woman with a cold, calculating demeanor, known for her unwavering loyalty to the cause, nodded slowly. "He might not be one of us, but he's doing something we've been trying to achieve for years, drawing attention to the flaws in the quirk-dominated world. The public will hear him, and many of them will start to question the system. That's a victory in itself." Another member, younger and with a fiery passion for the cause, couldn't contain his enthusiasm. "If we could sway him, or at least use his message to fuel our own propaganda, imagine the impact. He's already a public figure. People listen to him. If we could channel that influence." Fleck Turn raised a hand, silencing the room. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Hestia's words are a double-edged sword. On the one hand, they challenge the system, but on the other, they come from a hero, a quirked hero. Our cause is pure, rooted in the belief that quirks are a disease, a blight on humanity. We must be careful not to lose sight of that." He paused, his expression thoughtful, before continuing. "However, we've always acknowledged that even those with quirks, if dedicated to our cause, can become martyrs, brave souls who were infected but fought to cleanse the world of this curse. If Hestia's actions continue to align with our goals, we can consider him a tool, a temporary ally in our greater mission. But we will not be swayed from our ultimate objective." The room was silent as the members absorbed his words, the gravity of the situation settling in. Fleck Turn's leadership had always been a beacon for them, guiding their path with a clarity that left no room for doubt. Finally, Fleck Turn leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with a mixture of resolve and a hint of something darker. "For now, we will watch. Hestia has stirred the pot, created a ripple in the status quo. Let's see where this leads. If his words continue to sow discord and weaken the foundation of the quirked society, we will exploit that. But make no mistake, our goal remains unchanged: the eradication of quirks and the restoration of humanity's purity." A murmur of agreement spread through the room, the members of Hummerise nodding as they fell back into their roles, their purpose renewed. The calm that had settled over the room earlier had transformed into a steely resolve, the storm within them now focused and controlled. Fleck Turn's gaze returned to the screen, where Hestia's image lingered. "Let the world see him as a hero," he said softly, almost to himself. "But we will know him as a means to an end, nothing more." All Might and Hestia make their way to Nightie's agency over the rooftops. All Might is determined to ensure that his apprentice gets the best possible guidance to enhance and expand his skill set, and as experienced of a hero All Might is, there are things he isn't that best at teaching. While he knows he is smart, he isn't smart enough to nurture Hestia's brain to the heights he knows it can go. Luckily for him, his former sidekick is one of the smartest people he knows, and regardless of their rather painful disagreement and split, All Might trusts Mirai with his successor. Trusts that Mirai will be both willing and capable of teaching and sharpening Hestia's analytical, deductive, and investigative skills to the point it needs to be. After all, the only person that All Might knows to be better at those things than his sidekick is Nizu, and All Might is more than a bit upset and betrayed by the mammal. He's pulled from his train of thought when his comm snaps to life. A hero's comms are used either by their agency to give directions to nearby crimes, or to report an emergency being broadcasted to the comms of every hero in the area. There are very few reasons his comms will request, considering his agency is aware of his tendency to run towards crimes that he can hear, rather than the ones that are reported. The voice on the other end is frantic enough that even if All Might didn't already know this was an emergency broadcast, he could have figured it out by the unconcealable panic audible on the other side. All available heroes, please respond. This is a code yellow. I repeat, this is a code yellow. A trigger bomb just detonated in the city. Multiple individuals are under the effects of trigger, causing widespread destruction. We need immediate assistance to contain the situation. All Might's expression shifts from calm determination and nostalgia to grim resolve. He turns to Hestia, eyes serious. This isn't what we planned for today, but duty calls. This situation is dangerous, especially with trigger involved. I need you to stay close to me, follow my lead, and heed my instructions to the letter. Now let's move. Without waiting for a response, All Might sends the familiar torrent if one for all to his legs and crouches. As he launches himself towards the source of the chaos, he feels Hestia's spectral arms latch onto his shoulder, with Hestia himself hanging off his shoulders like a backpack. The moment All Might lands, Hestia jumps off his back, his wings spread out and ready to provide cover in case they're attacked. Cautiously, he looks towards his mentor, waiting for instructions. He may want to run into the situation and save everyone he can, but he knows this is a delicate and dangerous situation. Our priority is to neutralize and relocate the people affected by trigger, as well as rescue and evacuate anyone that is trapped under rubble or otherwise injured. I will take care of neutralizing the drugged victims and any other threats. You focus on restraining and evacuating people. If you happen to come upon a drugged individual, you are authorized to fight to restrain. If you see any remnants of aerosolized trigger, call it on the comms, and stay away from the area. It does not matter if there are people in there that need help. You will be no help to anyone drugged up on trigger and out of your mind. Are we clear? Hestia nods. Yes, sir. With that, they begin working in tandem in pattern. Hestia runs after All Might, unable to keep up with his speed, but capable of following the trail of knocked-out bodies. He uses his adapted black whip, that he's take to calling the eclipse chains due to their appearance, to tie up everyone he comes across, and proceeds to lift them up and deposit them in his spread-out spectral hands. Running every single victim out isn't feasible, as it would simply take up too much time. So Hestia decided that he'd just carry all of them with him. A mixture of Embody, Project, and Black Whip will let his spectral arms change shape or size, giving him the room to carry everyone, and he's more than strong enough to do so. As he's following the body trail, he hears a guttural shout from the side. All Might isn't here to check out and help whoever was there, and it sounded like they were in a lot of pain. Hestia is in a position to help, but those weren't his orders. Deciding that he really wasn't going to debate with himself on whether or not he's going to do his fucking job as a hero, Hestia turns on his heel and runs towards the exit where he knows there's a med station is. Before he can help whoever that was, he needs to help those that are currently with him. The thought causes him to speed up even further, something which he didn't think he couldn't do. Though, considering how his legs and lungs are screaming at him in pain, he figures that his body didn't know that either. Regardless, the moment he left the people he had with the heroes and emergency services on the edge of the disaster area, he bolts towards where the scream came from. Hestia isn't sure if he'd be able to live with himself if he fails to save one of the first people who needed him to. The same guttural scream as last time rings out, but now, it's filled with even more pain. Even from this far away, Hestia can feel the desperation in that shout. Swearing to himself, he stops and roots his feet firmly into the ground. Stretching his spectral arms into the distance to latch onto the top of two buildings, Hestia jumps, letting himself be slingshot in the direction he needs to go. Spreading his wings to glide and negate any damage from the fall, Hestia lands safely, rolling once to dispel the excess momentum. Looking around, he quickly assesses the situation. Two individuals. First is female, late teens, blonde hair, glowing green eyes, and a sword in her hand pointed at the second individual. Heavily bleeding left arm and chest. Second was a male, tall and muscular, fitted in a black, metallic costume. Spiky, black hair, tips of fingers covered in blood. So the second person, likely with some kind of speed quirk, requiring the angular metallic costume, attacked the first one, likely by shoving his hands, fingers straight, into the girl's arms and chest while moving at high speeds. Now that he has a rough understanding of the situation, he takes a closer look at the two individuals to figure out if this was a case of a hero subduing a drugged victim, or if it was that of a villain taking advantage of the chaos to attack someone. And he realizes that he recognizes both people. The male was Tachibana Hideki, more commonly known as Torque. He's a well-known, A-rank villain, known to largely focus on mercenary work, and with a near-spotless record due to his quirk. But more than that, Hestia is surprised at recognizing the girl. Hakama Mariko, one of his old classmates from middle school. She was actually one of the few people that didn't join in on his bullying. In fact, she was quite nice to him, at least compared to the rest of his classmates. He remembers her quirk, as it was one of the most interesting quirks he's ever heard of. Even to this day, with the knowledge regarding One for All, her quirk, Soul Summon, was one of the most unique and weirdest quirks he knows of. It lets her soul bond with one object, and it was bonded to her from then on. She could summon the object whenever she wants, wherever she wants. And as long as she lives, the bonded object cannot be damaged, let alone destroyed. But the thing that makes it stand out is the fact that whatever object she bonds with will need to be something that resonates with her soul, whatever that means. But he does remember her saying that the objects were passed along her family line since the dawn of quirks. So even if he wasn't able to recognize her, he would have recognized that sword. The fact that Torque, a known and pricey mercenary, is here fighting Hakama-san tells him all he needs to know. It's unlikely someone of her age and connections to have pissed off someone to the point they hired a hitman. So the more likely option is that someone hired Torque to kidnap Hakama-san for her quirk. He feels anger bubble in him at that. Yoichi, the gun. He growls in his head. Under normal circumstances, he'd be geeking out and excited by how Melissa managed to sync up his support to run solely on his power stockpile, and nothing else, but he honestly doesn't have the time, nor is it a light-hearted enough situation for such actions. A dark silver revolver, with glowing blue the same color as the crisscrossing veins covering his body decorating the gun, materializes in his hand in a show of blue and green fire. Pointing it at Torque, he cocks the gun, shoves as much energy as he possibly can, and fires. He doesn't care whether this is a case of standard human trafficking, part of a quirk marriage scheme, the plan of some rich asshole to want a pet with a pretty quirk, or someone wanting new experiments, but he decides that all of those options are equally disgusting, and that all of them make Torque equally as deserving to get his ass kicked. The moment he fires an energy bolt at Torque's arm, he summons common sense, leaps towards him, and smacks him in his left knee, bending it backwards. Fuck, son of a bitch. While Torque is swearing in pain, Hestia ties up Hakama-san with chains, just in case she's lost it because of Trigger, and moves her away from the villain. Pressing a finger to his comms, Hestia contacts his mentor. As much as he wants to take down this guy himself, the lives of the victims are a higher priority than his pride. Sensei, there's a hostile at my location. A rank villain, Torque, currently engaging to keep him away from his target. Understood. I am on my way to your location as soon as I am finished dealing the victims here. Do you require immediate backup? Even though his mentor can't see him, Hestia shakes his head, his eyes never leaving Torque. Negative. I've injured his arm and shattered his kneecap. For someone with a speed quirk, that is likely enough to render them a non-threat. I called this in case he has contingencies for such a situation. With a hum of acknowledgement, All Might cuts the link. Hestia, having never taken his eyes off of Torque, tenses up at that moment when twists his leg and snaps it back into a remotely correct place. You're Hestia, right? All Might's new sidekick? Well, sorry kid, but there's a pretty penny on her head, and I ain't missing out on this payday. With a wave, he runs around Hestia, grabs Hakama-san, and runs back to the other side of the clearing, all faster than Hestia could follow. Thanks for subduing the girl, kid. You're a real hero to me. See ya. With a cocky salute wave, Torque turned around and started running. Fuck. He fucked up. He fucked up big time. He runs after Torque, knowing that he's not fast enough to catch him. Knowing that he won't be fast enough to catch him. At least not until he gets access to the stockpile. But that shouldn't matter. He's a hero now. Silly things like limits shouldn't be able to stop him. He just needs to push himself. Just push himself a little bit more and maybe that would be enough. He hears a sigh echo in his head, and while he's a bit concerned if the situation is causing him to go insane, he ignores it. There are more important things to focus on than his impending insanity. The sigh echoes again, but this time, it's followed by a voice. That of the third user. Can you do this on your own? Ninth? Hestia screams back a resounding and panicked "No" in his head. Then swap ninth. Hestia's not sure what that meant, but if it could help him save Hakama-san, then sure, he'd agree to it. The moment he has that thought, he feels a lurch in the bottom of his stomach, and he's suddenly no longer in control of his body. In fact, it feels like he has double vision. If he concentrates, he can both see through his eyes, as well as see the void space inside One for All. Hestia's appearance morphs, everything shifting to a roiling, blood red. Any and all defining features disappear, leaving only the red. Even the multiple sets of teeth are a dark red, leaving the only other color to be the glowing white eyes. Third, in control of the body, embodying his anger, his rage, his fury, drops down to all fours, sprinting faster towards the piece of shit in front of him. The piece of shit whose blood he craves. He leaves holes and craters in the ground and building as he runs along them, tunnel vision focused solely on the carotid arteries, envisioning the blood flowing out of this vermin, leaving him dead and decaying, leaving him just as he deserves. As Third closes in on Torque all for one, his anger furage increases. This is the bastard that killed him. This is the bastard that killed his friends, his family, his allies. The bastard that killed all of his successors. He may have failed to rip the fucker's throat out with his teeth last time, but he'd been close. This time he wouldn't fail. Third is going to kill. He howls in rage when he's interrupted, when he's pulled back, when he's no longer in control of the body, until suddenly Hestia stops shouting, Ninth back in control of his body. His appearance morphs back to what it was, and he uses the moment to take a breather and figure out what the fuck happened. Deciding the easiest way would be to just ask, he does so. Hey, what the fuck happened? He hears Third groaning in pain and discomfort. Swapped control of the body. Can only be done temporarily, and takes a strain on both of us. That was me using my quirk to embody my anger, and is why I warned you to use caution. This time, Hestia groans in pain, and also a bit of annoyance, deciding that trying to parse through that red-tinted, rage-filled memory was not worth the effort, and looks around to see if he succeeded. Thankfully, Torque is taken out and under him, and Hakama-san is unconscious a few feet away. Unfortunately, Torque is bleeding from a hole in his back, and is also missing his legs. Groaning again, Hestia collapsing forward, right onto Torque's unconscious, probably dying body. He is so going to shout at Third for not informing him about shit like this in advance, even if he is going to thank him for the assist. Assured that All Might would arrive soon and take care of the rest, Hestia succumbs to urge to sleep, though much to his vague, disconnected worry. He faintly sees the ground beneath Hakama-san turn a swirling, misty purple, and sees his old classmate fall through the ground. Chapter 13. Downside of being naked is no pockets. Finally landing the finishing blow on the last trigger-high lunatic, Toshinori pushes as much of one for all that he can still handle into his legs and pushes, anxious to make it to Hestia's side. As capable as his young successor is, it would be foolish to assume he wouldn't have trouble against an A-rank villain. Not to mention Hestia hasn't called in for a status update on his fight. Worry and dread coiling in his gut. He lands at the coordinates his students sent him. When he doesn't hear a fight, he momentarily fears the worst. But then he spots them. The villain, missing his legs and with a hole in his torso. His student, limbs covered in blood, fainted on the ground. Rushing over, he shakes his student in an attempt to wake him. However, he doesn't wake up. Now truly panicking, Toshinori picks his student up and leaps towards the medical camp. This is All Might. The area is clear of hostiles. Hestia was injured facing a villain. Sending coordinates. Send in pickup and medical teams. With that done, his obligations as a hero, he refocuses on his duties as a teacher, which was to ensure the safety of his student. A duty that, so far, he's been failing. First, he got careless and let some punk get past him and attack Hestia during his first patrol. Now, he left the kid to the wolves in the middle of a disaster, and his student had to fight an A-rank villain with no backup. At his thoughts, he feels his quirk act up, coiling and writhing in anticipation and fury, something he very much understands. Before he could continue that train of thought further, however, he arrives at the med station, drawing everyone's attention. Medic! Man down! There's an immediate surge of movement, and Hestia is taken away to the side by one of the field medics on site. Toshinori lets out a breath and sits down, determined to stay there until his student wakes up. Unfortunately, fate isn't on his side, as his comm buzzes to life. Calling all heroes, the prior code yellow has been upgraded to a code red. I repeat, this is now a code red. Multiple bomb sites have been identified. I repeat, multiple trigger bomb explosions have been identified. This is not an isolated incident. All heroes move to one of the listed coordinates immediately. Something wrong here. At first, he thought that the bomb was an experiment gone out of hand, or a bunch of no-good punks biting off more than they could chew. But planning and instigating multiple simultaneous bombings across the entire country, and with a substance as volatile and hard to come by as trigger, this isn't some small timer. It's a large, sprawling organization, likely one that's took advantage in the power vacuum in the underworld. For but a moment, Toshinori can feel One for All in its full glory, pushing against his skin, begging to be let out. With glowing blue eyes that haven't shone with that much power in over 6 years, Toshinori glares into the distance. It seems like someone is eager to take over All for One's wicked ways of terrorizing the people. Toshinori is eager to show them exactly why that's the wrong decision. Waking up, Hestia pushes himself up into a seated position and hisses in mild pain and discomfort. Bringing his hand to his forehead, he gently rubs it. Man, does his head hurt? Looking around, he sees that he's in the med station outside the disaster site. He's suddenly, extremely thankful that his quirk stays active even if he's unconscious. Getting off the bed, he looks for his mentor, but he wasn't anywhere in sight. Weird, he thinks, judging by how bright it is, it's been a couple of hours. Pushing that issue to the side, he walks over to the medics and bows in gratitude. Thank you for taking care of me. Without giving them the chance to protest, he catapults himself above the buildings, landing a few streets away. Looking around to check that no one's here, he releases his quirk. There has really got to be a better way for this than sneak away and shift, he mutters with sigh. I really need to speak with Melissa about getting a proper costume. It's a pain not to have the needed equipment on me. With a shake of his head, he pulls out the hero-grade tactical communication device, or more commonly referred to as the TCD among heroes, that his mentor gave him, and reads through the updates and notices sent. Reading the notice for a code red, meaning some insane moron planted multiple bombs across the entire country, Izuka's eyes bulge. What the fuck? Immediately switching to the device's radio mode, he calls All Might's comms. The moment it connects, he doesn't give his mentor the time to speak. Sensei, I checked the TCD. There's a code red. How can I help? He hears a sigh. Well, that's not good. Young man, while it is good news that you weren't gravely injured, you should still rest. I believe this is above your pay grade. Izuku scowls at that. Bullshit. Being a hero means putting our lives on the line in defense of others. It's meddling where we need to, even if people don't want us to. Every single part of this job is above our pay grade, as there is no amount of money that can equal our very lives. All I care about regarding this situation is that people need help, and I can give it to them. So let me, please, Sensei. Hearing his mentor's laugh come through, Izuku untenses. Well said. In that case, this is an all-hands-on-deck kind of situation. Go to the nearest explosion site to you, and work from there. Be careful. Putting his TCD back in his pocket, Izuku activates his quirk again, transforming. He needs to be at those sites quickly, right as he's about to catapult himself into the air. However, he hears Nana's voice in his head. Ninth, it's time. Close your eyes and imagine that you are free, untethered and unbound from any and every concern. Even though he wanted to rush, he decided to trust her. Closing his eyes, he does as she instructed. A minute or so later, he doesn't feel much different, other than a feeling of calm and muted joy. Confused, and wondering if he looked like such a wreck that Nana decided to walk him through an impromptu meditation session, he opens his eyes, and then blinks again, but this time in confusion. He's flying. He grins. He's flying. Hell yeah. Stretching his wings behind him, he gives them a swift flap, moving up rapidly. His grin widens at that. Cracking his shoulders, he flaps his wings again, taking off towards the first bombing site, leaving behind a boom in his wake. For the next 3 hours, Izuku was a whirlwind of motion, a blur of wings and shadows against the chaos engulfing the city. Every second felt stretched and compressed, a relentless rhythm of rescues, evasions, and split-second decisions. His first stop was a devastated shopping plaza, where a trigger bomb had leveled an entire block. The air was thick with acrid smoke, and the cries of the injured pierced the chaos. Diving into the rubble, Hestia's enhanced senses guided him to a trapped family huddled beneath a collapsed storefront. Gritting his teeth, he spread his wings wide, using them as makeshift shields to protect the family from falling debris as he lifted them to safety. As he flew them to the nearest med station, a wave of dizziness washed over him. His healing factor worked overtime to stitch together countless micro-injuries, and the strain of continuous exertion gnawed at his stamina. But there was no time to rest. The TCD buzzed with a steady stream of updates. Another bombing site needed help. At his second stop, an abandoned warehouse, he encountered looters exploiting the chaos. Shadows flickered around him as he dispatched them swiftly, binding their limbs with his eclipsed chains before ferrying unconscious bystanders to safety. The looters' sneers and curses echoed in his ears, but Izuku tuned them out. The injured came first. By the time he reached the third site, a residential neighborhood engulfed in flames, Hestia's body screamed for reprieve. Yet he pressed on, weaving between collapsing rooftops and choking smoke to pluck terrified children from their bedrooms. One boy, no older than 7, clung to him tightly, his tear-streaked face buried in Hestia's chest. "Don't let go," the boy whispered. "I won't," Hestia promised, his voice resolute despite the tremor of exhaustion creeping into his limbs. He carried the boy to safety, setting him down gently before launching into the sky once more. Each sight blurred into the next, his mind compartmentalizing the horrors to maintain focus. Yet, through it all, one thought anchored him. Keep going. There are more who need help. Of course, random villains and thugs took the opportunity presented by functionally every single hero being occupied to harass and attack people in the parts of the country that weren't blown up, so he had to step in there too. Thank gods for his healing factor in this form, or he would have had a few stab wounds as souvenirs. Honestly, you'd think even criminals and villains would have the decency to lay off during a national bombing crisis. Shaking the thoughts away, he focuses on his current task, dropping off the people he's carrying at the med station. Seeing it a bit ahead of him, he starts dropping altitude. His landing may not have been the smoothest, jostling the civilians a bit too much, but it thankfully wasn't enough to cause them further harm. Just panic them a bit. Leaving the people in the competent hands of the field medics, Hestia turns around and launches back into the sky, ignorant of the swirling movement of his shadow. As he's flying to the next destination, he feels something slam into him, making him lose control of his flight path, stumbling and rolling through the air. Snapping his wings out, he creates drag and slows his momentum, turning to look at whatever hit him. He's greeted to the sight of a black-haired woman covered in a second skin made of shadows, with shadowy wings keeping her afloat. "Hestia!" she hisses with what is obviously contempt, though what he did to piss of this lady he isn't sure. "On my name as Ebon Vale, I swear, I will put you down like the traitor you are." Hestia blinks in surprised confusion. What the fuck? Ebon Vale? The hero Ebon Vale? Why is she hunting him down? What the hell does she mean, traitor? Raising his hands, he makes a shushing movement. "Hey, calm down. I think there's some kind of misunderstanding. One I'll be happy to clear once the code red has been lifted." Misunderstanding? A misunderstanding? Are you trying to tell me you saying that the geneless are our equals is a misunderstanding? Well, at least that clears that up. Guess she's just another one of those dumbass that think the Quirkless are lacking genes, rather than the fact that they have recessive genes. Even when he was Quirkless, he still had the passive fire resistance he inherited from his father. Honestly, this is like 7th grade biology. To think even heroes are that dumb. Sighing in disappointment, he gets ready to fight her, only to come to the realization that he doesn't have any idea how to fight in the air. Fuck. Well, if there's one thing All Might was thorough in teaching him, it was to radio in and call for backup when he's in over his head. So that's what he does. "Command, this is Hestia. Location is midair. We've got a Viper, alias Ebon Vale, currently engaging, requesting reinforcements." Even as he was radioing in, he had to keep flying away from Ebon Vale's attacks, unsure of how exactly he could retaliate. Ebon Vale flies around with ease, closing in and swiping her shadow claws at him, or launching spikes made of shadows to impale him from a distance. And the whole time, Hestia's been analyzing her and how she fights. After all, while she may have much more power with hers, she isn't the only one with a shadow quirk. So the moment he notices a pause in her attacks, he embodies Black Whip and launches an Eclipse chain at her, only for it forcibly stop right in front of her. Grinning, she reaches out and grabs the chain. "You may be able to command the shadows as well, traitor, but you are nowhere close to my control of it." And with that, she yanks the chain forward, pulling him in as a result, and stabs her claws at his chest. In a desperate attempt to not turn into kebab, Hestia puts his wings in front of himself, shielding him. Upon noticing that her shadow claws clanged harmlessly off of his wings, she snarls and tries to impale him with a large shadow spike, causing him to panic. An attack of that size will pierce his wings, especially from such a short distance. Unfortunately for Ebon Vale and fortunately for Hestia, the shadow spike is parried and sent off course by a red feather. "I ain't late to the party, am I?" A voice drawls from behind them. Hestia looks over, and to relief, his backup arrived in the form of the number 3 hero Hawks. When Hawks arrived mid-battle, the sudden shift in momentum was palpable. His crimson feathers sliced through the air with surgical precision, deflecting Ebon Vale's shadow spikes and forcing her onto the defensive. "Watch and learn, rookie," Hawks called out, his tone as casual as if they were sparring in a training room. But his movements were anything but relaxed. Each strike was calculated, herding Ebon Vale into a shrinking bubble of space where her options dwindled by the second. Hestia hovered at a distance, observing Hawk's technique. The older hero moved with a predator's grace, every attack seamlessly blending into the next. As Hawks closed in, he drove Ebon Vale toward Hestia. "Your turn, kid. Make it count." Hestia's mind raced. His lack of aerial combat experience was a glaring weakness, but he could adapt. He spread his wings wide, channeling the force of his descent into a downward punch. The impact sent Ebon Vale spiraling toward the ground with a resounding crash. Dust and debris erupted into the air as she landed. Hestia hovered above the crater, his breath coming in labored gasps. He glanced at Hawks, who gave him an approving nod. Relief surged through him, until he noticed the swirling black and purple mist beneath Ebon Vale. "Wait, no!" Hestia shouted, diving toward her. But the portal swallowed her before he could reach her, leaving nothing but a lingering sense of dread in its wake. Landing beside Hawks, Hestia clenched his fists. "She got away." Hawks placed a hand on his shoulder, his expression uncharacteristically serious. "Don't sweat it, kid. We know she's a viper, no way she'll escape for long. You'll have to give in a detailed report about the incident once this mess is over, though. Calling all heroes. This is not just a code red. Trigger bombs were exploded or spotted in dozens of countries across the world. Capture any suspects. I repeat, this is the work of a well-funded international organization. Capture of suspects is now the priority." Toshinori lands at another bomb site, immediately spotting a discrepancy. There's a crusader-looking motherfucker trying to sneak away while very obviously speaking into their comms and holding cartoonishly stereotypical detonator. Well, at least Toshinori found what might be a grunt for the organization behind this. With a predatory grin, he jumps towards the medieval Power Ranger reject and grabs the back of his head. "All right, you walking Renaissance tragedy, you're gonna tell me where the rest of you tinhead LARPers are, or I can launch you into the sun."